I'll call to order the meeting of the Manchester-Essex School Committee on December 2nd, 2025. We'll start off as we always do with any public comment. If you are online, please, I know that the keyboard wasn't working perfectly, so if you're online and would like to make a public comment, please put your name and address into the chat. And then do we have any public comments?
Yes, we do.
All right. So your name and address.
My name is Karen Harrison of 13 Tex Point Road, Manchester. Last night at our select board meeting, we reviewed the letter that as you're proposing to send. And it is the unanimous opinion of the school committee that we endorse most of your points, but we will not sign a letter that includes the arguments about apportionment. We'd be happy to send a similar letter ourselves, but I need the numbers.
Thank you. And last call for anyone online. Okay. Moving on, we will. Maggie, I believe you can hear us. Is she able to?
Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Wonderful.
So
okay.
Report.
Hello. Okay. So I'll preface this with, we haven't had a meeting of our student advisory council between our last one and this one. So it's mostly just me, but we've got some fun things. We recently had Thanksgiving. Everyone was having a grand old time. We had some fun events, including stuff like Mom Bowl and Powder Puff and our home Thanksgiving football game, which ended out the fall sports season. And with that, now we have all the winter sports starting up. I think most of them started yesterday, so that's very exciting. As well as Chicago ended, and we've already started on Drama Fest, and we have our winter concert for all of the different music things coming up this Thursday. Classes are still classes. Everyone is still enjoying all the funness that is tests and projects and homework every single night. But it's overall, there haven't been many student issues that I've heard about. Everything tends to be pretty chaotic, but like in a good way at this point in the year, as we're going into the next season of things. So not too many concerns. People are just counting down the days till winter break. So let me know if you guys have any questions.
Thank you, Maggie. Any questions at all? All right, perfect. Thank you very much, Maggie. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't have a specific chairperson's report tonight, except this is the official beginning of budget season. We will be taking a first early look at the FY27 school budget tonight. So looking forward to hearing that. And so we can move right on to our consent agenda. And I will make a motion to approve the AP vouchers 129 through 1029 through 1030, the payroll of November 20th, 2025, and our meeting minutes from November 18th, 2025.
So moved.
Are there any questions or clarification?
I'll just note I asked Maria to make a few minor tweaks specific to the Essex Board of Selectmen kind of representation, my comments about them, which I believe Maria has agreed to do, but they were very minor.
Thank you. Are we ready to vote that?
Did we have a second?
You did.
Oh, I was the second. I'm sorry, I missed that.
All those in favor? And let's see else. It's not yet. Remind me, did we have?
We anticipated, but we don't have.
So moving right on to our subcommittee reports, we'll kick things off with elementary facilities and MSBC.
I'm going to let John take this one. I was not at the most recent
I was there, but I had to log off a bit early. It was on the 25th, so last week. I logged off during, I guess, was that the one, remind me, was that the one with that included the community as well? Or was that the week before?
That was the week before.
All right.
This is sustainability.
Yeah, we did the community meeting. There's a sustainability update. Jeff took us through the different scenario options of fulfilling the components of what they call the preferred design. Not the preferred design, the preliminary design. Or we have to look at everything from renovation, add, and then those two options for each of the three items in the feasibility study, which are those three configurations. So it was really just kind of a project team update on work that being done.
So, and I imagine Tuesday's meeting was sort of a recap of the feedback you received from the community meeting from the week before.
I think the big highlight is we're doing a fall community meeting 1 and 2 recap next Tuesday evening, the 19th, at Manchester Memorial. And it's just nothing new, but kind of a redo of the first 2 meetings that were in Essex at the Memorial School. There'll be tours of the Memorial School ahead of time. Some people had indicated interest in wanting to see it, if they hadn't seen it already as a point of comparison. It's just an opportunity and I hope that people who were able to come to the first 2, whether they're from Essex or Manchester, this might be a good night for them to come out and get an update. That people will be recorded and available online as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't be there. But we do have continued business from our last meeting to revisit. So the space summary and educational program, we do have some of the pro team online here to answer questions if needed. But if you recall, there were some questions and update requests to work through. And so we're bringing it back. Those changes were made. Everyone had a chance to review them, I hope. And so are there any clarifying questions before we move to vote on these?
I just want to say thanks to whoever and or everybody who rewrote the STEM aspects of the plan. It is much cleaner and much more coherent and concise. So thank you.
It was a team effort. We let that. And I think, the question of what were the changes, and I appreciate the amount of time you went through and the things that you highlighted, Jay. I would say there's nothing substantive. We didn't decide we're changing the way we do anything overwhelming. It was a lot of mishmash language, as Jay put it, where we would refer to technology and engineering, but part of it's aspirational, part of it refers to what we do now. So we just tried to clean up and make more consistent with the inputs and recommendations we had. So I wouldn't say we just, we flipped it and now we're going to be a Montessori school. I mean, the basic content has remained the same, but I think it's clearer and easier to understand. So thanks to everybody who gave their time on that.
Thank you for your inputs on this. That was really helpful. So again, I explained last time, my brain just works in this order. So I will make a motion to approve the educational program as presented.
Second that.
And that includes the space summaries, right?
Nope,
You're set.
they're separate because we approved the ed program and we accept the space summaries.
Okay.
So this is just the ed program. Any discussion? All in favor?
It's unanimous.
Okay. And then I will make a motion to accept the space summaries as presented.
Second.
And I'll just offer the point of clarification there is that the 3 space summaries indicate the 3 configurations named in feasibility study or study, different studies. But things like information or design, early preliminary design on an ad reno is just part of the overall preliminary work that needs to be done and submitted. So those 3 templates represent the 3 configurations we cited for study.
And Pam, just to restate what I think I heard, these are kind of a high water mark in terms of square footage. And as we get into design and efficiencies and whatnot, that likely will come down, but it won't get bigger. All right.
Yes, I mean, I would treat it as a high water. The intent is not to make it bigger. I'd hate to say not a single square foot bigger in case we had something that we haven't considered yet.
Okay.
But no, the intent is not to grow it.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
It's also.
Thank you. Thank you all. We bring this back to SBC.
And thanks to the project team for making time to be on in case there are any questions.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on to finance committee. You wanna,
Sure.
I was a few minutes late.
So, Anne, thank you for the update from the Manchester-by-the-Sea Select Board. We did talk about that letter in the subcommittee, in particular, adding specific numbers about increases to some of the budget drivers. And so Michelle and Pam are working on that now. And I think at this point, we have now gotten input from all three agencies, and we'll take that apportionment section out for the joint letter, because I think we've all weighed in on that. And the Essex Select Board has said they would treat that separately. In terms of our December 8th proposed joint meeting, which is not quite official yet, but leaning that
I
way.
just got distracted.
Okay.
Yes, it's gonna be noon time on you.
This, I'll share a little bit what we're thinking about it right now, but we may want to return to it after our budget discussion if something comes up from our budget discussion later that we want to put to that meeting. But right now we have a tentative hold on December 8th around noon for the next quote unquote number crunching joint meeting. And the proposed agenda, we don't have a version of it for you because it's pretty vague. Basically, it is a preview of the December 10th budget hearing. So sharing the proposed budget that we'll be talking about tonight, giving the town's representatives a chance to weigh in and share where they see themselves in that, or implications for them, or considerations that we should be accounting for, and make sure that they know what they're walking into for the hearing on the 10th. That is the general gist of the addenda.
Next. It's not really a question or a comment. But what comes to mind is that part of the purpose of the budget hearing is to have that conversation so I can understand the idea of providing materials in advance. But I'm a little concerned that if that conversation takes place on the 8th, we're not going to, and I feel like that's something that the whole committee should be hearing. You're nodding as if this has already come up.
We asked the question, how is it different than the 10th? And the general answer was, it's a preview of the 10th.
So we're transitioning out of the old style collaboration and into public meetings. Prior years, we would have a meeting with the chairs and the collaboration members to say, this is what we spoke about with the school committee, or this is what will be going to school committee. Here are some of the numbers. This is what the general overview of what we're presenting at the upcoming hearing. So you're not caught off guard for the first time. So it's just has been the practice to have kind of a joint meeting ahead of it. So we don't have to have a meeting if the committee doesn't want to.
So I'm not going to be the person that says don't have that meeting, but I will say it does. I have concerns because in recent years, the public hearings have not been the forum where we get that interaction. There have been very few members of the town boards that actually engage in that with us at the public hearing. And I wish that weren't the case. So it does seem like a little bit of a step backward, because I know in those, what I'm calling open collaboration meetings, people are not afraid to speak their mind and their opinions and everything very openly. And I just would rather we're doing that at the public hearing so that our whole committee can be part of it. I'm one person, but it's
I share that sentiment.
okay. So is this something that,
I can go back and reschedule to last week.
but is there a middle ground? Is there like, I mean, I know we have Essex FinCom represented online and we have Manchester Select Board represented here. Is there
Man,
Can we make
I-
sure that we engage with sending the materials in advance, or is there a middle?
Yeah, we can send the materials after today's meeting.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. We don't have a meeting to send them the materials. I guess, the other thing that we talked about is what do we want to ask of towns?
Mhm.
And, I think the general consensus there was it's a little too early to ask the towns to take a stand on implications.
Sure, because we haven't told them what we're.
Right.
Come, yeah.
And again, that is sort of the purpose of the hearing to hear from.
Yes, I've always seen this, whatever we're gonna call it, collaboration number cruncher is more of an exchange of information. So where are you in terms of your healthcare numbers? Do you know anything new? What are your initial projections? So it's more of a give and take conversation. But it's totally up to this committee, how and if they want us to continue. I'm just trying to facilitate, the fact that if it is for give and take conversation, the theory that the more conversation about it, the better, not that we're taking positions, but that we're sharing inputs,
Yeah,
then I don't think it would concern me having different sessions about the same thing. If we're thinking that it's gonna take wind out of the sails from the 10th, then we can reschedule it until after as a debrief of what we heard, whatever you prefer.
is there value, and I'm looking at you because you've been engaged in this, is there value in having this in, because we have 2 public hearings required? Don't we have another one in January?
Yeah, so it just,
Why not have it in between so that we, at the first public hearing, we've given the whole thing, get engagement there if we can, hopefully, in that public hearing. But then have like the 3 groups together to talk about, okay, what does this mean after everyone's been able to take it and process it a little? I'm not trying to boss, I'm just trying to understand the value and get the most out of this.
So personally, the more that the towns are in a position to speak to implications on their budgets, the better for us.
Yeah.
And if the general consensus is this is too early, the 8th is too early for them to weigh in on that, then it might be better to wait a month in between the two.
I guess would canceling the meeting, in your opinion, having been at these meetings, take the wind out of the sails as far as progress that we've made in getting these 3 entities together?
I don't think
Has there
so.
been like a regular cadence and this would disrupt that cadence, for example?
No, putting it off by several weeks or a month wouldn't impact that. I don't have any worries about that. Everybody else has strong feelings on it?
I don't see the harm, but if you want us to wait until January, you can.
Yeah, I also don't necessarily see harm in having this. I think at max it's only going to be an hour. But I also don't see any harm in. We probably would have another meeting in between the 2 regardless. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm indifferent.
Then let's push it off.
I'm leaning to you. I'm just bringing what I'm thinking and
Yeah.
I'm kind of leaning on your.
I mean, what would the benefit be of having?
Just to bring you and more awareness for the public hearing. It's really what that is.
People might ask a couple of questions, that we could answer quickly beforehand. So, the public hearing might be a tad bit more streamlined,
Just an open dialogue back and forth. This, we're dealing.
Let's
One entity
just
is
go ahead.
dealing with negotiations, one entity is dealing with.
Yeah.
Capital projects, you get it. From the conversation, you get a sense of what each of the parties is dealing with as they're wrestling. That's the gist of it.
And I feel like the more information everybody has and the more opportunities to communicate about what Pam just described, better. So I'm not opposed to it. I'm in favor of having it, but I want to respect your time and the time of everybody else who would be attending that meeting if it would be.
I think a lot of the same entities will be likely be represented at the hearing, so I think it's okay, 2 days.
Yeah, 2 days.
Yeah, it's not gonna change anything.
I think it would be really valuable to have it between.
So we'll push it off. Yeah. Not long, but enough to make it worth getting together. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you for.
Can I ask you guys to just take a vote on that?
Sure. So I move that we delay the tentative December 8th meeting, joint meeting until between the two public hearings.
A second.
All in favor? Opposed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I want as much communication and collaboration. I understand. And I'm on board. Amazing.
All right, and I think that was pretty much it, Jake. Otherwise, we just, asked a few very high level questions about the.
It'll all come in when we talk about the budget phase again.
Right. Yep. Okay, so moving, policy and advocacy committee. Did you guys meet?
We've met since the last event.
And remind me, is there anything, we're good. And, or do we have,
Nothing for review and approval.
that's what I was gonna say, that's a month, but I said nothing for review. Negotiation team did not meet, so we can move right on to the superintendent's report.
Mine is brief tonight and it's a couple of public service announcements, and the bulk of what we've been working on since our last meeting is a pretty good turnaround was the ed plan and the deliverables for the building project and of course the budget. But in terms of public service announcements, I just want to say, congratulations and kudos to the theater team. Chicago was just a really fun and fabulous show, very upbeat. Got a lot of positive feedback on it. I know everybody's been hearing it, and it was really just it was a wonderful night. So thanks to everyone who made that happen. Start thinking now about what the play will be next year, and Drama Fest is already up and running and preparing for its show later this year. So thank you, and great show. Coming up, we have Maggie mentioned some of these things, so I'm just going to do a quick repeat. We've got concerts coming up, winter concerts for the high school this Thursday night, the elementary concerts next Thursday night, and then when we get back in early winter on the 22nd will be the middle school concert. And hot off the presses today, we've got a date for the STEAM showcase, and we have a whole team organizing, and we've expanded kind of the group that's going to be managing it this year, and the deans are stepping up to take a lead role and help out with some of the logistics planning. So mark your calendars for March 18th for our annual STEAM showcase. We have been talking about the Essex community meeting. I'm going to come back to that in a second, and just there it is. It dawned on me that we haven't published kind of the reminder of where you find information about school closing during delays during this winter season. And seeing everyone was kind of hoping maybe today might be a snow day, and it wasn't. This will go out in the newsletter. It's also on the website. But if you're new to town or this is your first year with kids in school, you will get a direct message to your phone and your email in addition to traditional postings on the Boston area radio stations. And it'll go up on Facebook. So it is always, there is a process behind decision making, but some of it is a little beyond our control. We'll always try, if we can, to let people know the night before. Something like today's storm, it was like 4:30 check in to make sure nothing changed in the overnight. And on a day like this, we'll try to get them out and in your inboxes by 5:30, 5:45 the latest. If it's a real emergency, like tree down on our way to school, it will come late, but we're always trying to get it out as early as possible. And it is a regional effort to make these decisions. So just putting this on your radar screen in case we have any more weather issues before the holidays. I do have some Essex building project information. I can go through it again if it's helpful. I think there's nothing really new other than what we covered in your report. Just really want to emphasize that the 9th, that's next Tuesday evening, we'll be at Manchester Memorial School for our recap fall meeting. There'll be tours of the building ahead of time. And this is an open Q&A session after a brief presentation about where we are and where we're going with the project. So everyone is welcome, whether you attend online or in person, and we're looking forward to seeing you there.
You'll be doing tours of the building.
Yep, 4:30 tours of the building. I think we all know, I'll just take a second to say what we're working on in case people can't make it to the meeting. In the feasibility phase, we're deciding site, the grade level configurations that were listed in the feasibility study. It's an agreement with MSBA. There will be things that become evident that may not be feasible to go forward. We have to show our work, like a good math problem. So even though data may be pointing in a direction that it doesn't look likely that we would pursue that model, we will have to continue to present facts about it all. Preliminary design process. Preliminary design, the preliminary process pushes us in the direction to do deeper work on one selected model. That will start to emerge mid-January to February. And then once that emerges, we'll spend the spring developing a more detailed design for the preferred option. So I think over the next month and a half, grade level configuration discussions are going to be happening at this meeting and the SBC meetings as we work our way through that phase of the project. All of our documents now, it was in the newsletter, it's in all of the superintendent's report. It will carry this slide clearly outlining what the 3 study scenarios are. One is combining grades. One is splitting the Essex students into 2 different cohorts, pre-K3, which would stay in Essex, therefore making Essex Elementary site, the building site, and bringing 4th and 5th grade over to the current Memorial School, which would not be considered part of the site or development or project funding agreement. We would have to manage any changes to that building separately. We're studying probably what everybody thought would be the logical solution, grades pre-K5, all 250 Essex students in some type of new renovated and added on to building on the current Essex site. And then we're looking also in studying the scenario of merging all of the elementary students together into one building, effectively making the new Essex site Manchester Memorial School. The project would fund that, MSBA would fund that because that would be the new site location for a facility solution for Essex. And that would turn Essex Elementary School and its property back over to the town of Essex. And the district would maintain these 2 sites. So that's what we're studying now. We're early into this phase, and I think you'll be getting more updates on this as time goes on. And this is what I would encourage people to come to the community meeting to hear more about and to weigh in on if one of those options is of concern or of interest to you. And then this is, as we start to talk about the timeline and setting dates for town meetings, what we're trying to do is align our calendar locally with the calendar that we have to fulfill for the Mass School Business, the MSBA, the Building Authority. So right now we are in the feasibility study and working on the preliminary design program. Once we narrow down to one of those options based on the data, they'll start to develop the preferred schematic design. That will all happen through May of this year. We should be ending the year with a preferred design that we can bring to MSBA for approval. That's why we're starting to talk now about a potential October town meeting date, because we will have a design going into the summer. So we'll be able to start the year and do community meetings around that design prior to the October date. That's just a little bit of a timeline question that's come up. So in the spring, when you see advertisements for community meetings, that's going to be to weigh indirectly on what that preferred schematic design looks like. So that will be either a renovation addition, or a new facility, depending on what site is chosen for development. That's where people can talk a little bit about what Jake has brought up in those space summaries. Like, do you really need all of those rooms, or can you do this a different way? And that's when we'll be taking feedback on those options. So we are in the thick of it now. And hopefully a year from now, we'll know what our direction is. And that's about it on that. There have been some late breaking developments on graduation requirements, and we'll speak to that when program studies is up. I guess I'd just say that the breaking news is not that there are new graduation requirements, but they're the midway point of studying what they will be.
You really put it out there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That was misleading.
Yes. So it's an extensive proposal and an update on what they've done. And I think they're looking for reaction and feedback, and they're going to continue with hopefully a formal recommendation by end of the school year, the June timeframe. So there's nothing we need to do with it right now, but we will try to show you where we are in good shape and where we might need to have some growth going forward.
Do you have a sense, Pam, is there usually delayed implementation or grandfathering? I'm just thinking like, how do seniors have only so much they can do. To be determined.
I will be very surprised if this is implementable for 20. I mean, I think it'll be a couple of years before they get all of the agreements, permissions, and the authority behind pushing it forward. I don't think that they're far off. I think there's a lot of really good things in there. I think they're going to bump into, I think there's going to be a political question around reinstituting end of course exams designed and administered by the state, and there's been a vote to eliminate such a thing.
Yeah, or see some kind of traditional challenge. They try to do that.
Like when they rolled out the framework in the initial MCAS, it took quite a few years of thinking they were there until we really got there. So I think we want to be mindful, make adjustments where we can, but probably not overcommit. I mean, they've got some specifically named, which is new for them, some specifically named programming in there, like the MyPath, which is a tool, and we probably have to purchase access to that tool. And it looks to be a good tool, but if you're going to require access to it, then is there going to be funding to support it? We have Navia. I'm not saying that that's the end all be all, but there's quite a bit I think we have to start with. A couple of years.
We won't let the kids panic. Changes.
And in their defense, I don't think they never have rolled something out and said, and it's effective for the junior class. What they would probably phase it in the freshman. And some of the things are tied to a topic that will be coming up for us over the next couple of months, which is people, if you remember last year, there was, they put some restrictions around the tech schools and their recruiting practices and their admissions practices. And that's another example of there was a lot of press around all of that piece, but underlying that, there's also work for middle schools to do around designing pathways for students that they weren't particularly clear about initially. So we thought the tech schools had work to do, and lo and behold, we have some work to do too on sketching out some plans, and that's also tied to MyPath. So I think there's going to be a connection between the middle school work and the high school work, and I think that's good. And I think you'll start to hear us talking about this MyPath piece coming along over the next couple of months, so we can start to assess it, because they are pushing it as the tool to be used starting in 6th grade. So there's a lot into that, and we don't want to, that would open up a whole discussion topic tonight that we weren't really prepared for, but stay tuned, it's coming. And it's I think a very interesting one.
Any additional questions for Pam? All right, so we'll move right on to our high school program of studies, graduation requirements. Julie, are you?
I'm right here. Come on down. Hi.
All right.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Hi.
Nice to see you. Oh, you don't have too much. All right. Well, good evening, everyone.
first thing I want to talk about is there was an error in my memo that I sent to you. I was working off of last year's memo. And so where it is the graduation requirements, that whole point about the civic action and digital literacy, that was from last year. That I really thought I deleted off of this year's memo, but clearly did not. So I'm sorry if I sent some of you into a little bit of a, what is she talking about? Because we are not talking anything about that course for changing graduation requirements. Yes, yes. Okay. Thank you for being on top of things. So the first thing for our graduation requirements is an arts and technology graduation requirement. So we're proposing a 2.5 credit, which is 1 semester graduation requirement for visual and performing arts. Based on some of the things Pam just talked about with what's coming down the pipeline and what may be recommended or told that we need to require from DESE. It will be something we have to implement anyway. It's something that's many of our Cal schools and our other schools that we compete with offer more than just a semester. So we're kind of baby stepping it in. It looks like based on the doc we read on what came out yesterday, right? Was yesterday from DESE. Their recommendation is a year. So this would be a good dipping our toe in. It includes visual and performing arts. So we have a lot of options for students to take throughout the course of their high school career. It includes also, because performing arts typically right now is in U Block. So it does offer them the opportunity to even take that additional step in and do something during U Block if they would like. I know I have Tamara here who has, I know that the Arts Council has prepared a letter. I don't know if it's appropriate to have her read that, but if you want, if you're ready, if you'd like to speak about that.
It did get sent to.
It did get sent to you. All right, so we have an Arts Council. Sorry, let me put you right on the spot there.
Sorry, this would be during the regular, it wouldn't be something kids have to do during the.
It doesn't have to be. So visual arts has courses that are during the day, but our performing arts typically right now is happening during U-Block. So if they wanted to do concert band or, some of the other options we have, that could be during U-Block on an every other day basis. Just giving people the idea of what to expect. Some of the other things in that section of the program of studies, we changed the WP, withdraw passing, and withdraw failing to just W. It seems like a lot of schools are doing it. Colleges don't really care if it was a WP, if it was a pass or fail. So let's just make it very simple. We separated, so the visually, we separated the chart in the subject area and the additional requirements. So previously, and one thing that really makes me a little annoyed, I guess, is in our program of studies and in our handbook, the graduation requirements it's not the same thing. They're just slightly different. So we separated it out. So here are the subjects you need to take, 4 years of English, and then the additional requirements underneath, so that it's just a little bit separated. So if someone's coming in, they don't have students in the high school yet, it makes a little bit more sense. Okay, here's community service. It's right here. It's not just up in this paragraph, so that senior year, they're not saying, what do you mean you need 40 hours of community service? So it's a little bit more spelled out in that chart, everything that you need to do to graduate from MERHS. We changed the additional graduation requirements to successful completion of MERHS competency determination requirements. We discussed those competency determinations previously, I think, in the year at a committee meeting, because we don't have MCAS as a graduation requirement anymore. We are required to give these competency determinations. There's also an appendix in the back of the program of studies that lists our competency determination. So that is linked as well. We added language that dual enrollment and online courses are not included in the student's GPA, which has been our typical practice, but not something that's been outlined, which is important for people to know if they choose to go on that path. We've condensed our course withdrawal policy. Just going through, our director of counseling, Samantha Pindar, has done a great job of looking at what's in here and what can maybe is a little bit redundant or can just be condensed so that people have a clear idea of what to expect. How do I withdraw from a course? We've reflected the 11th grade
credit adjustment. So we have with PE and health. So we just made sure that the credits matched that. And then the counseling mission statement has also been modified and condensed. So that's all in that section. Additionally, for the English department, making a quick rename of English 11 American Literature to English 11 American Literature 2, following from the previous year. Changing the one of the senior course offerings from Hamlet to Macbeth, which would end up being a new course number. Would you like to take that?
In favor.
And just, the senior course offerings, the teachers tend to change and we try to offer and keep things fresh and new. And I think there's just been a little bit of a call for, maybe they've just had enough of Hamlet and moving on to Macbeth just to keep it fresh. And it's still seniors only. It's still the same. It's still offered CP honors, all that, but just giving people a new option in the land of Shakespeare. Why not, right? And then proposing some new electives. So one of them being public speaking for high school, which would be a course that was offered, and then schedule dependent. And this has happened, I think, years ago. Maybe someone could speak to this. A drama class for middle and high school students. So right now our schedule is aligned, and if the schedule allows for this, we'd like to maybe start talking about that a drama class for middle and high school students. They're doing the musical together. It's working out really well. And there seems to be a little bit of a call for like doing more of this throughout the year during the day. So again, it might not be something that's possible, but we're just thinking, let's see, put it in the program, and then we can put it on there as something to work toward. World Language has updated the seal of biliteracy requirements to reflect MCAS scores and Apple testing. So we felt like that was important to do because MCAS is not a graduation requirement anymore. However, it is still important if you're looking to earn that seal of biliteracy. So we want to make sure that we clearly outline what we expect and what we need, and if you're going to earn that seal. Updating course descriptions to reflect proficiency targets, and then including those scale levels of proficiency with explanations. I can't speak enough about how Michelle Magana has really led the way in the World Language Department in leaning forward with this proficiency and going with the DESE recommendations. But that department, which is already very successful, is doing a great job in putting these proficiency targets into their coursework. She's also updated it. So even in, like I said, all the courses, we'll talk about where we expect the students to land in terms of proficiency. So that's really great. The math department, we've deleted quantitative reasoning honors as it's not offered, and make sure QRCP reflects that it's offered to seniors only. So that's just a class that's offered to seniors. Program of Studies is a living, breathing document. And as soon as I turned it into you and said, these are our changes, I found some more. So we're always changing teeny tiny little things. For example, the science department, biology honors. For some reason, the Program of Studies just had bio CP. So now we have a description that matches honors. Science also, and I'm noticing that's not in here as well. Something must have happened. Science is offering 2 new courses as well, marine biology. Do you not have that in your? I must have. Okay. So there is 2 new offerings or proposed offerings for a marine biology course and for a marine science course. I'm trying to find it I'm trying to find my draft program of study in here.
I'm hoping
They're in the
grabbed
draft
the wrong list, right?
I'm sure. They're in the program, right? So they're in there. Yep. So that's good.
And would these be upper grade electives, or would these be, you could take this in place of traditional biology?
Oh, very good question. I was just about to explain it.
No.
So the first one is called Marine Science by the Sea. And it is a full year course and it's honors level. So it's just for grades 11 and 12. So that's an upper level course. It's going to have a research component, and highlight the topics and have a field guide. So there'll be a lot going on in that course. To counter that, we wanted to also offer a 2.5 credit, so a semester long marine biology course that would be strictly college prep. That is grades 10 through 12. So it won't take the place because it's not necessarily a lab science. We still have the 3 years of lab science. It will be and you will need for the marine science by the sea, you need to complete bio and chemistry or be also in honors chemistry. So it's looking to be an additional course rather than that's taking the place of a lab science.
Why wouldn't the CP version be lab?
Neither one of them.
Either of them,
Yeah.
even though it has field work.
Well, marine bio we're not intending it to take the place of the biochemistry and physics. That is typically the 3 lab sciences that the students would take to satisfy that requirement.
That's fine. You can still have it. Still
Yeah.
kind of lab science.
Yes, you can. Sorry. I'm thinking it would be
You're
taken
scaring
from,
of putting a.
no, I'm sorry.
Course and not making it a lab course.
What I'm thinking is like what I don't think we're looking for is to have people say, I don't need to take chemistry and physics now. I'm just going to take this class instead.
That's fine.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
And then marine bio, because it's a semester long, it wouldn't be counted as a full year of like a lab science, but it's more to give people, so someone could take, I could take in 10th grade, maybe I take this marine bio course for CP credit, and then that next year I do my marine science by the sea.
So what is our definition of a lab course? You've got me wondering now.
Our different.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this and I just want to make sure I want to read what the lab course is when, for example, our course, like I'm looking at I'm trying to find the chemistry. Having it specifically talk about labs being a part of the year and an integral part of the learning material. And I'm not entirely sure, and I'm pretty sure, but I'm not entirely sure if our marine science by the sea is designed to be a specific lab science to kind of replace what I'm thinking like our chemistry classes, where they're doing experiments in class multiple times a week. I'm not entirely sure if this was designed to necessarily do that, if it's more so research based and field based, so they'll be out and about. We're not in the classroom in the lab.
So we should have a conversation about that, because I would say that field work and, research in the science, application is as valid a lab experience as sitting at the lab bench.
Yeah. So it's not designed as a lab course. It doesn't have a lab component. So it wouldn't be a lab science. It wouldn't count as a lab science. I think it's a good question for me to follow up with counseling to see about how that would fit in, what they feel about that in terms of.
And I think we may be mixing our interpretation of what a lab is and what lab science refers to when talking about mass core and recommended course sequencing for college enrichment. This
We have to have a definition of what counts as a lab science. Mass Core gives us some guidance, but we have to have.
I understand, but from listening to the conversation around this, I think the intent here is that those 3 courses are still your lab prerequisites, right? This may have a lab or field-based research component. This is more along the lines of, if you've been around a while, we used to have authentic science research.
Mm-hmm.
So this is built on the design of authentic science research with a marine biology focus. So less the traditional biochem physics trio and more getting out and doing the research. And of course, it's interactive and has some lab components to it. So I think the simple question, not to overcomplicate this or have to extend this forever, is as they present to us the graduation requirements, is the expectation that they'd have to take the big 3, or could we substitute in our own local lab courses for any of them?
Well, in our graduation requirements just say science. They don't say lab science.
Yep.
So to my reading, when we were talking.
That was one of the edits we were going to make after we sent that in.
Because when hearing us talk about lab
Be
science,
totally
we talked about
against
taking.
saying that it's just a traditional 3. If we have good offerings that are lab experience based, that kids are interested in, that get them engaged, count it.
But the lab science part matters in a specific criteria, well, for college admissions, not for our graduation requirements currently. So it may
Define what it is.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just saying how I'm understanding this and seeing if I'm hearing it the same.
Yeah, and I would say we're 3 levels above where this decision should be made. I think we want to kick it back to Christy and have her make some determinations based on her expertise.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it wasn't seen as something that would take place because it's saying successful completion of bio and chemistry or concurrently in honors chemistry. So because it's grades 11 and 12, it could take the place. I'm seeing that if you're not interested in physics, then it could be something that, because it's 11 and 12, this could count instead of taking physics.
Prerequisites are different than counting in this.
Yes, yes, but I'm just reading it as that. We're not intending it to take the place of bio or chem, but it could be, if you're not someone who's interested in taking physics, then, yeah. That's great.
And I support that.
Thank you. Sorry, and that was I think I started that whole thing by not saying lab science correctly. And then our additional services. So we created a section at the end that says additional services right before special education. And we offer descriptions there of academic center, which has been around for a while, just trying to, give that a description. And then we're hoping to maybe add a new writing lab course where students can receive extra support. So that would be something that's recommended by the student support team and or school administration. So it won't be something that students can necessarily elect to take. It's something that for supplemental reasons, we'd have them maybe take a writing lab that the idea would be that it would be semester long, something where students are identified based on test scores and they're receiving extra help in in writing. We'd like to add something that's like that in math. We're kind of just taking baby steps toward it and seeing what we can do with the schedule we have and with our resources. Heather and I have been talking about having students who are identified as needing extra supports in math, maybe pulling some time during U block and having them spend time in academic center and using some resources we currently have rather than and if writing lab goes well, looking into what we can do for math as well.
One thing is, because I know when I was in middle school, 6th grade, there was a program through the Department of Education to help with struggling with math, right? For getting into the child to attend to that. It's not very support they can like the person.
Exactly. So we're going to try to do the best we can with the resources we have. Math, I'm being it's pretty full up with what the teachers their availability and what they're able to do. So instead of doing nothing at all, I'd like to do just a little something. I know that, like I said, the writing lab is something maybe we can dip our toe in and see how we're doing and how it is working with the supports. And if, we're off and running with that, then taking a hard look at how we can make that happen in math as well. I agree. It's not the same. I think bringing the students, if we had something where students could go maybe a couple times a week during their ULOC to academic center to get some additional support, the teachers that are in academic center have been there for a very long time and are well versed, especially in that 9th and 10th grade curriculum. So I feel comfortable with them with 9th and 10th grade math assistance. That could be something that just starts the conversation and it starts us moving. Keeping the schedule aligned would be something else. Then we could work on maybe utilizing middle school resources or maybe having it be an 8-9 combined. If they're together, then it could be something where we're really targeting the 8th, 9th, and 10th grades for their additional support. All sorts of opportunity. It's not in the program necessarily, but it's just something we've been talking about.
Have we made some kind of study that demonstrates there's a higher need for extra writing support versus math support?
We haven't done a study based on that. It's just looking at, we're looking at MCAS scores. We're looking at seeing the need. I think writing across the board helps students in all subjects across the board. So having a lab was just, to be honest, it was kind of an idea we had talked about, and it was one of the ones we knew we could bring to fruition easier than having the same thing for math. But I'd love to look into that as well. We also have the ability with math. We have some other resources to use we have iReady. We have things that students can do. Might not be successfully independently, but knowing we have that, hey, if I put them in academic center with our academic center teacher who knows the curriculum, that may be a good place to start. If I can't say we now have math lab, what else can I do? Yes.
How does the writing lab fit with I'll say, eventual vision of an MTSS system?
Mm-hmm.
You may not be there yet in high school, but I'll be honest, I'm a little hesitant to start committing students who need extra help.
Mm-hmm.
There's U-block time, particularly if we're going to put in an arts requirement
Right.
that performing arts is happening during
Right.
U-block. That would prevent them
Yes.
from, kids who need help from potentially
Yep.
doing performing arts. So how does how does the writing lab, particularly if we think it's a seed for expansion during
Right.
block time, how will that jive with an eventual MDSS approach?
So the writing lab the hope for the writing lab is that it's not during ebook. It would actually be during the day. So it would be a block during the day, semester long, or if we didn't put it in as a selection because it's not something that a student would be able to select. So similar to a student taking learning strategies or something, looking at that need and finding a way in a schedule where they could have that block of time for that. I don't like to put a lot in U-Block for that reason, because we have a good number of students and we encourage more and more students to take a performing arts course during that time. Those are often, or they can be every other day. So even with the math, we can work with their schedule. And if it's not going to be every single day, work on it being during that time and just start and see. Like we're going to have to make adjustments to it and it's not going to be perfect, but if I wait till it's perfect, it'll never happen. So I just want to start and see how we can embed these. U-Block is a great place for this stuff. It's also a terrible place for this stuff because we have performing arts during that time. So how can I maybe use that time if students are taking contemporary music ensemble, but that means every other day? Does that mean those other 2 days or those other 3 days, I can then take them and have them do the math supplements if they need it?
So can I just clarify?
Yes.
Will this writing block have to be very?
So writing lab would not have a writing block. It's going to
Sorry,
be
I misheard.
outside. Yep, it's going to be outside and during a block of time during the day.
Students view or see.
What we need to do is set some serious parameters as to who qualifies to get into writing lab, and we're going to base that on test scores. We're going to base that on some hard data so we can say this is the cutoff and this is what we recommend. We'll see where that goes with that.
Is it
Like-
is it a student choice or you will go in there if you meet the criteria?
I think it would be
In a sign.
in a signed class, similar to a learning strategies or even academic center. We have students that we say you're going into academic center. It's not necessarily their choice. I think we have to make the decision if you're in need of some supports, then we're going to put you in this for a little bit. For example, I've gotten emails from my own kids in their middle school. They're going to take this supplemental course because their test scores didn't hit the mark. So
are they assigned there for the year or a semester or just?
it would be a semester base. So I would put them in for a semester and then reassess and see using the teacher that's in there and their writing skills to see if they've reached a certain mark and if they've reached a place where maybe they can graduate out of it or they can stay for the year.
Like the maximum student number, I was asking, one is how do you get in? Who qualifies to get in, but then
Right.
is how many students you.
I would have to see, let's see what that mark is. And then is it 30 kids? I don't envision 30. I don't envision.
And I would say
30
it's
kids, but I
something beyond the program of studies. They're implementing a support system for students. It's not part of the program of studies. It's not an option. They're outlining it as a service
It is. It's
available.
in addition.
We would outline MPSS.
Yeah.
But then she's going to get her team together. They're going to establish benchmarks. They'll work with Heather as an assist to how you set that up. And then they're going to trial run for a year, a benchmarking system that identifies students in need of services, putting them in semester chunks, moving along. I would say we need to give them the room to give this a try and just see how it works.
But I'm comfortable with giving it a trial period. I am concerned, however, that students who meet the criteria are likely to be in there, right? This is not how MTSS works, right? If they're in there for, a year, that's one credit, that's another course they can't take. Right? And every other kid gets the option of taking something of their interest or whatever, right? And this now removes that option for this set of kids. I'm comfortable giving it a try.
I hear what you're saying. No, I get it. Yeah.
That is, if they're struggling to the degree in which they need remedial services in the ninth grade, they're probably not well set up to be successful in another.
Well, then we should be looking at middle school.
We are looking at.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this could be.
We have kids that enter the district at the ninth grade.
Yeah, that's fine.
So
Yeah, I'm comfortable moving forward with it on a trial basis.
Yeah.
But I will be looking at whether or not this has an impact on those kids' opportunities.
Definitely.
Like how do
And
you assess them? Successfully, you're in the program to offer opportunities beyond that.
And show me how that happens for those kids.
I mean, I guess the same argument could be made for students that have to take learning strats. That's during the day too. And that takes away, and there's a good number of ninth graders that unfortunately aren't able to sometimes be scheduled into courses or like digital literacy or some other things that are the things that they would take in ninth grade because of learning strategies.
So
So
I
I
didn't
think,
realize that was the case. I raised the same question about that.
yeah, but that's a special education service that we.
Well, that should be part of their special education plan, right? Which is a different scenario.
Yeah, but it's also, those students also aren't getting, because learning strategies happens as a semester or a year-long class during the day. The same argument could be made that that's one block that they can't take another class.
Yeah, so.
And some students opt not to take a full complement of courses either. So I think it's hard to prescribe a full 4-year program for students. I mean,
Our students, our 110 credit limit or our graduation requirement is the students far exceed it. So that's one that maybe next year we'll be raising those, but so there's a lot of opportunity for them to take lots of different electives and I think given our size, we have a lot of opportunities for the students. I was not thinking of this is going to take opportunity away from someone who needs help and with writing. I was seeing this more as, this is going, especially if we're starting out in ninth grade, how can we do this and have their next 3 or 4 years at the high school be far more successful because they're not struggling so much with the, writing, which again is across the board and, similar to the arts where it's across the board. They're writing in every class. So it can only, I don't want to see someone be struggling and us not do something about it. I mean, we seem to come back to the table every year. We talk about MCAS, we talk about places where we're not necessarily making the strides, although we are a school of distinction. We still, it seems like we need to be offering something more to students that need just a little bit more help.
Can I comment on that? Because I'm hearing what you're saying, and so I was reading very carefully how this is worded, and what comes to mind is that it's an opportunity based on available resources with it. This is just added value based on what's already in house and available. And when I look at this, I'm reading who have been identified and teacher recommendation as needing additional support with writing skills. We're a small enough district that in doing the schedule, if you've got a 9th or 10th grader working with the guidance department, the counseling department to create their schedule, and this is an identified issue, but when that's an opportunity is going to be conflicting with this thing they're super passionate about, then if nothing else, you're having a conversation with the parent and they might say, okay, well, here's what we can do separately. We could find a different way to support this. And maybe not.
If there's a way for a student to have voice.
My point is, it doesn't say force. It says.
That's what I heard.
Well,
What I heard.
Nothing
I'm
is
just saying-
nothing is forced. I mean, I can't make anyone,
There's always options. So I'm just putting it out there that I think there's
I think
room
it's-
for implementation.
Yeah. Parent could decline it, a parent could decline special education service.
Just like
No,
parents
yeah.
can opt their kids into higher courses than their
Yep.
teachers recommend them for.
Yep.
So.
It could be an override, it could be something that the opposite of an override.
Yeah.
And underride.
Yeah, give it a shot.
I do have a couple questions. You good? Mr. Chairman? Okay, these are not about this. Close. One is on the proposed new electives, the drama for middle high school students. I'm not getting into the weeds on this anyway. I'm just curious if, should this be something that's possible? Is this something that would be considered cross-department? Or are we talking more of like a literature-based drama? Or is it, because this seems also very performing arts-ish as opposed to English? And so my secondary question with that is, would a drama course go toward the arts? I think that were to become.
I have a follow-up thought on that.
Yes.
It's thought about perhaps combining the drama and the public speaking together and creating sort of like a hybrid version of that. You know, so I did something similar in high school, so that's why I keep in mind.
Yeah,
So
it's certainly, so we polled the students and asked them like, what are they looking for in the program studies? And we got some really interesting responses, but one of them, a couple of them were talking about, you know, drama and a public speaking component slash, you know, debate is always something that we have that evidence-based argumentation. It's still an offering. It's not something that gets the requests that we've had. So we're thinking about we're missing public speaking, right? We're missing that element of students being able to get up and speak in front of people and teaching them how that skill. It's a very important skill. So I think yes to all of that. I think the drama is something. So we have English teachers that went here, and when there was a middle high school drama class, so they are pretty well versed on what that kind of looked like. And I think the thought of bringing it together and grabbing some middle school students is because we're already doing 6 to 12 musical. I think we're really trying to come together as a unit with visual and performing arts, especially with 6 to 12, and that, you know, we're not just two separate entities because we act as one. And so could we get some interest in one of the benefits of this aligned schedule is giving middle school students the opportunity to start earning maybe some high school credit, or maybe taking some more challenging courses. It's like one of those dream schedule lines. We have the opportunity to do this. So if a middle school student's really interested, right now we have them out as separate, but we can take a look at it's all course requests. It's all the requests. Like what do the students want? If we have not enough requests for something, or if we have students saying we'd love to see this being mixed together, then next year let's mix it up. Like I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think they necessarily have to be separated. But I think the idea of them was this was going to be more drama based, more about, you know, improvisation, scene work, like all the things that go into putting on a performance. And public speaking was more not student focused, but you're getting up and speaking and here are the skills. Drama currently lives in the English course offerings right now. Could that change? That could also change. Like that could be, and we could talk about that being a visual performing arts part of the requirements.
Or even, I guess my question, and you don't have to answer it right now, but the thing I would want to ask is if the stars align and that is able to be offered.
Yep.
How could we not allow that to be considered part
Yeah.
of it, you know, applicable to the arts requirement?
Right.
Literally. So I would just ask for clarity on that.
Yeah.
Could it come to fruition? Because I think
Yeah.
it's great that you're utilizing all available resources to add
Yeah.
offerings.
I think that the question there would just be in the teacher certification and things like that, you know, like who's qualified to teach it if it's going to be a performing arts. And the struggling part, the thing we struggle with performing arts and at our school, at the high school, is that happens during U-Block. So are we able to then maybe with the schedule, can we get someone who is more performing arts geared and pull them out of a U-Block and have them live in the schedule A through G? Right now we have that for visual arts. So it's options, and we'll be building the schedule in February. So it's certainly something we can think about.
All right. And then my final question is, I don't know if we've looked at percent. I'm sure you guys have figured this all out of the Arts Council has looked at how many kids already, you know, take arts, that sort of thing. My question is, are you prepared resource wise to be able to implement an arts requirement? Do we have the staff, the time, the class space for all students who have to do that?
Yes.
We are prepared for this? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
As a newbie, I'm trying to understand why is performing arts only offered during U-Block?
So performing arts specifically is offered during U-Block. This is something that predates me, but it's basically because this staff is shared with the middle school. So they are the exploratory band and chorus teachers, and the middle school utilizes them in there during the day for them to fill out the exploratory. So because of that, with the FTE, what we're left with is having them in U-Block. I bet Joe Janak could probably speak to it better than I can because it predates me when this was kind of created.
I would say the two things. The schedule was not aligned And that's when you can get on time.
Yes.
And also there was an interest in not creating, eliminating band and chorus as singletons in the schedule and forcing the performing arts kids to choose between that and something like French or AP physics.
Yes.
So it was a way to pull it out of that rotation and open up other academics options for them, because if this may have changed, but at the time when the move was made, it was the same group of kids who were getting pinched between high interest, high level course choices over and over again. So there was a push of it into U-Block.
I
We
mean,
talked about that in Student Advisory Council the
Yep.
last couple of
We
years.
have.
too. It's the same issue, but it's also after school. It's not, I mean, it's U-Block, but also some of those courses are offered after school, sound waves and jazz band.
Now with the aligned schedule, there was some preliminary discussion about whether or not you could just put them back into rotation, because you could now share your staff among the day, throughout the day. What that would they, the two additional singleton pressure points is still a concern.
Yeah.
So at some point, I mean, what I'm liking about this program of studies, and I can see there's some open-ended pieces, is there's a little bit of R&D in there. We're going to try some things and test some ideas that we have, and they may be successful, and then we can build greater structures around them, or they may be unsuccessful and we eliminate them right quickly. I think if you can get something like the performing arts drawing class 612 to work, I think that can demonstrate for staff how you can think differently about some things and maybe bring some other ideas to. So if we can test out a few things, we may see ourselves back at this table saying it's time to put band back in the body of the day and force some choices.
And there are credit courses offered outside school hours.
That they need to, so for sound waves, that they need to try out and make sound waves.
That's
Right. It's not a club, but something they need to audition for. And be a part of it that way.
It's English jazz band, journalism.
Yeah, journalism, something.
So I have a couple questions. I'm all good with the program studies aspect of this. My questions all have to do with the graduation requirements. And since this is a school committee policy, I just want to understand the implications and the rationale of it. So, first of all, in the visual and performing arts, I very much appreciate the letter that was sent. It's the best articulation I've heard of the rationale for making it a requirement. And so I very much appreciate that. My first question regarding this is, what classes are going to be subject to this new requirement? In other words, as soon as we make a policy, it is in effect, we're not expecting seniors to, if
No.
they don't have it, right? But who would be expected to meet it?
So typically when we change the graduation requirement, we're talking about the incoming ninth graders, so the current eighth graders.
So we should probably make a note of that in the program of study somewhere. Just so,
Yeah, sure. I'm
Just so-
following just what's been done in the
Yeah.
past, so I don't know if we've ever made those notes before, but we can make an annotation that says for class of 2030. Woohoo!
the other thing that that the letter, the support letter, at least made a link to the vision of graduate. And this is not something you have to answer here. I think it's a question, it's a point that I want to make for all of us to think about is we really should, as a committee, sit down and think about our graduation requirements in light of the vision of the graduate. How do those relate? Right. And I think the support letter that was submitted starts down that road for visual arts, but it'd be great to think it through on all of our graduation requirements. So that's just a comment that I made. My second question, Teresa already asked the question about scheduling and budget. It sounds like you're good on that to make this happen. My third question on this has to do with why half a year? Why not 1 year? With reference mass for, recommends 1 year. It sounds, even in your comments, you said this is a step towards,
If we get,
something
if we get
Right.
that we need to
So
make it a year.
why not just ask for a year here? What's the rationale for that path?
A lot of our courses are are semester long. And so for students, because some of the counter argument to this is some students, their schedules are very full and they have other courses they're very, interested in taking, and instead of making that the full year and changing the game for some students who have, their plans in line and they're taking different electives and extra science and extra and loading their courses, we're starting with the semester long courses because many of these courses, with the exception of AP, is a semester long course anyway.
But aren't we essentially doing that for all the kids who love art by forcing them to take all these sciences and maths?
I'm not sure I follow that.
If you're saying that there's not room in kids' schedules because they may have other interests to take 1 year of art, for kids who love art, aren't we forcing them to not take art by requiring them to take all these math and science?
Because we have a course, we have requirements that span, I think it's important to span all the different subjects. This isn't an art school, so I can't just have you take art and not anything else.
But why do we require 4 years of math? Is that a state requirement?
The Common Core recommendations, so we follow all of the Common Core with the exception, I think, of art.
So that's sort of just curious. I'm just very focused.
And following what a lot of colleges recommend as well. We're following. So part of the reason why we're talking about having a half year of it is because some colleges, not necessarily in Massachusetts, but students are applying to a lot of colleges, California in particular, that students are getting turned down or threatened to be turned down because they were not meeting the arts requirement.
I'm not worried about California. If the
Yep.
students
Well-
can go in California, they can ensure they get an art.
We have to worry about that. Our counselor.
Can we just,
Yeah, but I
let's
don't,
elevate here.
Yeah,
Let's take it
I don't-
down a notch a little bit, please.
I don't want to require all students taking art because few kids apply to California. It's not a rationale to make the required.
Fair point.
So I guess I'm wondering why. A part of what I hear you saying is that logistically, it would be hard to implement at this point in time to require everybody to do a year of art. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that would be difficult logistically. Yes.
Over 4 years.
With two, well, we have 4 visual and performing arts teachers. It would be difficult to schedule all the students for a full year.
For comparison, how many teachers do we have, say, in the math department or the science department or social studies?
Math department has 6 teachers, which is 5 math, and then 1 dedicated business teacher. Same with science has 6, which is 5, science has 6.
Mhm.
Social studies has 5.
Yeah.
And English has 6 currently. World language is 5.
Julie, do you mind if I just add a piece?
Yes.
Okay. One of the pieces when the half year graduation requirement consideration for art was proposed last year, simultaneously, the high school administration was working hard to increase the arts offering. So previously there was U-Block for the performing arts, and then there were the visual art courses. But this year they've added additional courses like the instrument lab and some other components. So she's simultaneously building up offerings within the restrictions of what they have to have more flexibility and opportunities and options for students both within their schedules and what courses they can take, like the addition of drama. So simultaneously building up the programming and the offering so that you can move towards having all students have it, while also being realistic about setting a requirement that we can ensure that we can meet both for enrollment and staffing. Because currently, both performing arts teachers that are at the high school, the bulk of their time is middle. So we'd also have to be strategic if we were going to increase the amount. So there's a bit of a resource and a building of programming that's taking place that they've been really creative.
So what I'm hearing you say then is that it's doable right now, given staffing, scheduling, whatnot, budgets,
Mhm.
to require a path. But if we required a year, it would have implications for scheduling and budgets.
I don't think we've taken it to that.
We haven't.
I would hesitate. I think we're overthinking this.
Yep.
I think it's an incremental approach to implementing something that has yet to be implemented. So instead of asking for the full year because there was some negativity around it last year, let's ask for the 2.5. Let's build it in and build some momentum for increased interest in the program. I think we're overthinking this. It's very common statewide. It's going to be proposed as a requirement at the state level. We can start building capacity. We can start integrating it into an expectation set for kids coming in.
I don't see it squeezing I don't see math and science squeezing kids out of taking anything else that they want to. The math, science, and English requirement and world language requirements are aligned to position kids to get into colleges that they may not realize that they want to get into when they're in the ninth grade. That's why those are set where they're at. There's not a lot of, it's not very complex. It's quite straightforward, and we haven't had art. I don't know why we haven't had art as a stated requirement, because it has been very commonplace in the North Shore. So we can take the baby step, we can assess how it goes, we can see what the availability is for coursework. I don't think you need more staff to go to the next level, but I can't say that for certain. But I know we offer more full year PE with only one person at the high school, so I'm sure there is a creative way to get there.
I keep hearing that also that this is in a live document, right? And it seems like
Yeah, we're gonna want to change it.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
last three, like up to the last minute, and then we'll be changed to the next year.
Yes.
And the year after.
Oh, yeah.
And the year after.
Except this is a school committee policy. The graduation requirements is not part of program studies. It's out there, but this is a policy. This is a.
That's in the
So that,
order.
yes.
It's housed in the it's also
Are we
in our.
It's also in the handbook.
Yes.
The proposal
Yes.
for the is the half year arts requirement.
Yeah, that's my proposal for the graduation requirement.
Right, so we really should take two votes. One
Yes.
for the program studies, one on the policy. And actually, this should be a first read. It should go up for public comment and then come back for a second. Because this applies to all.
Address this?
Yes, we've addressed it twice before and we agreed to do that.
That will,
Yeah. So I have two other quick clarifications. Is it about the art?
It is.
Okay, go for it.
Because I'm thinking on where you are, and I will say that from a policy standpoint, I like the idea of starting with a half year, even if it would be no problem at all to go straight into the full year. Primarily because if we are going to, as a committee, start requiring ways that the students spend their time and their courses, then there are other things that might be involved there also, like technology requirement, or like all other kinds of things. And it would have to be a more holistic conversation, I feel like, to warrant a full year straight out the gate. So that's why I appreciate the incremental approach.
I agree. We should have a holistic conversation about graduation. Okay, so my next two, and these are more details, just so I understand.
Mhm.
One has to do with community service, very minor thing. When you moved it down, you took away the phrase 10 hours per year. I just want to be sure I understand the implications of that. Is it because kids weren't doing 10 hours a year anyway? And didn't really.
Nope, it's because it didn't fit nicely in the chart. Honestly, I can put it in parentheses under credits. The thing with 10 hours per year is that's not always the case. So
Somehow it gets distributed off.
right, it doesn't always get, so that might have been part of the other rationale behind it too. It doesn't always get distributed as 10 hours per year. I don't want anyone to think like you can't be a sophomore because you didn't finish your 10 hours of community service. If you want, I can put it under the credits in parentheses.
I'm not wed,
You know.
I just wanted to see if it was purposeful and then.
Yeah, yes and no. Like, yeah, no, because it didn't fit. Yes, because it didn't fit in the little margin there, but also because it's not always done 10 hours per week. And so we're trying to just be, if it's not something that's happening,
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
fine with reflecting reality.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
Necessarily. The only implication is, if we want kids to be thinking about service through the years,
yeah,
right? And maybe there's and again, this is a policy document, maybe this is something we ask about when it goes out.
Yep. The counselors they meet with their students every year, multiple times a year, and they're always talking to them about where
Yeah.
they're at with community service. So
We-
they're,
We
Counselors do a
parents
great
get
job.
those emails all the time, there's opportunity, right?
Yep.
Okay, the next detail is related to score.
yes,
Fourth quarter senior, I understand that. This version now has 4.75 credits associated with that.
that they've always earned those credits, but it was never listed. So those are the credits
how
that
do
the
you get-
students,
How do you get almost 5 credits for a quarter experience?
because of it's their full course load.
And what is that? Okay,
That's all
maybe I didn't understand the implication. What's that do to the credits for the other courses though?
It doesn't do any,
I know, but they're getting 5 credits for 3 quarters of a year.
they're getting their score because they're not there for fourth quarter. They're getting earning the credits for that, all those hours. Those hours need to count for something.
I understand, but they're already getting credits for in their school day for courses they're already taking that they stopped taking.
Right.
So really, instead of, what's a year, 28 times, no, 7 times 5, right? 35, instead of 35 credits, they can earn 40 credits in the senior year.
So if you look at the grade 12 schedule down below and on page 8.
Yep.
So English, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And then
You don't have 4.5 there,
don't have 4.5 there.
and so equals 35.
I don't have 4.5 there. So I would take the 4.5 credits out of the,
Yeah, why aren't, yeah, that's
I would
what
take
raised
it-
the question for.
yep, I would take it out of the chart so that it's not something that, because it wasn't listed before. So I would just take the 4.75 credits out of it.
Out of the graduate.
Out of the chart.
requirement.
Yes, yes.
That makes sense to me. Okay.
Okay,
And
Thank you for
they're still
catching
getting
that.
35 in the year.
yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
I love this document. As soon as we vote on it, I'm going to want to change it. So thank you for catching that.
Can I make a request? I don't get the sense that everyone wants to take the time to have the letter read into the record, but can we include the letter from the Arts Council in the record with this? Because it was really,
Helps, yes.
really
It was
helpful.
great. They worked really hard. Yeah.
But she's waiting to be recognized.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Good.
It's an entirely different topic. I was looking at the path. So don't have kids in high school yet. Just completely ignorant of like how these things all work together at a practical level like, for kids to try to experience. So, two pathways kind of struck me as far as their flow. And I'm thinking about kids that, I'm thinking about basically, I'm concerned about track.
Okay.
So middle school, kids come out of middle school. So looking specifically at math, I'm looking at 41 math parting pathways. Kids come out of middle school, and then the arrow goes, say on the far left side, fundamentals of algebra 1, straight down algebra 1 start B, straight down geometry college prep, straight down with algebra 2 college prep, with no arrow or opportunity to move up in levels.
They have opportunity.
Okay, those are just not reflected.
They're just not reflected in the flow chart. The flow chart is something, another thing that the department chairs in our discussion today are hoping to change as of next year and just put, these are 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, because it doesn't recommend that I can be in algebra 1 and then move into algebra 2 honors. I can move into, we have students that either are recommended for that up or down, or we have students that override into things up.
Okay,
So
so that's
it's, there's, yes.
it's not as rigidly
No,
tracked.
it's not.
In this, in
Nope.
the way that it kind of feels like in this document.
Yes, no, it's not at all.
So I have a follow, are you,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the other was, see, like science feels more like honor for CPs. Like,
Yeah,
so they're more kind of like, oh, this would be an honor. Or
yep.
this would be, then,
The same thing for the math.
Right.
This is one of those pathways that this predates me. They were kind of part and in there. And now that we're all taking a closer look at it, I'm new, you know, our whole administration team is new and we're looking at it saying, what is this? And it's not really reflecting. So I think next year you might not see this chart. You may just see a table.
yeah.
Which is-
Well, I like
Has
the
the
flowchart.
options.
we
Yeah.
don't have any courses, and I know that this is not a you problem and that you didn't design this, right? We don't have any courses that are designed to fill the gap, such that if a student comes out of 8th grade and they have not taken algebra,
Right.
they can't go into geometry.
Right.
Because they haven't taken algebra.
Mhm.
We don't have, say, a half year, what do we call it, a semester long algebra 1 course and a semester long geometry course, such that they So they would have to take a whole year of algebra concurrently with a whole year of geometry.
Right, because it's a full year
In
course.
order, right, lots of
Yeah.
times, I mean,
Yeah,
AP classes are a full year, but then they're a semester once you get to college, 6 months later.
Yeah.
Um, I just am, this isn't really a question, it's more of a comment that I think that is an area that we need to be addressing because we start tracking students so early in math
Mhm.
and we start tracking them when their elementary experiences are still impacting their ability. And so they're coming to two different elementary schools. They have two, and I know that we're also doing all of that work on the other side, in those buildings. But it is, I think, we're going to continue to see this ripple effect coming up, through our middle school and into our high school. And it would be unfortunate if kids who just didn't have the base of knowledge, but did have the ability,
right.
then weren't able to achieve those higher levels because they started with a weaker foundation. Period.
Thanks. It's a good comment. It's food for thought for sure.
You never stay there, fix it and take, and it's reflected in the chart of the two math classes
Yep,
at the same time.
we definitely have students that will double up. In order to either reach a certain level or just because it's math is their thing, they want to double up in it, so.
Their follow-up.
Is it about pathways?
Kind of.
I have some,
Why are right, we talk about you can override your teacher's recommendation. Why are the requirements for add drop different for a student who overrode their teacher recommendation?
Where are you looking?
I'm not.
Oh.
I just remember having this conversation.
So overrides, I guess overrides tend to happen before the courses, it happens before the course is begun.
Yeah.
What we like to do is when the students meet with the counselors and they select their courses for the next year and they're recommended by their teachers to take a certain level. We want to see those overrides happen then in the spring before the schedule is built. That's the best time for it to happen. Doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes it takes a while and some conversations and the override and an override form comes in later in the game. But that's to change in add drop kind of applies to any course. So override is specifically, I was recommended for this level by my teacher. They did not recommend me for this level. I'm going to, with my parents' permission and approval, I'm going to override into this course. Add drop is to just, change your schedule once the schedule has been implemented. So there's a timeline for that to happen. A lot of that has it. So there needs to be a pocket of time for where add drop happens and it doesn't make an impact on, a student. Did they earn credit? Are they getting grades for this? For seniors especially, there's a tight timeline for add drop because they are getting their transcripts out pretty quickly. So the add drop period is talking about just any course that you're making a change to.
I thought I remembered a different. Go back to it. No. So
Course level changes.
that if you were going to drop the class, well, I'm just gonna, Lindsay, why don't you go ahead while I read what I'm talking about? Sorry.
well, I mean, it's probably a quick question.
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of about the pathways.
Okay.
Might wrap my mind around.
Yep.
How it all kind of works together. Page 55, there's clearly like kind of 4 levels. And I think it spelled it out on other pages, the 4 grades.
Mhm.
So world history 2, US history 1, US history 2, and then electives. Where did media literacy and civic action?
So that's
kind of floating in center.
it's at the top because it's 9th grade.
9th grade,
Yeah.
and it's mandatory.
Yes.
And it's a semester long.
Yes.
So it's being taken at the same time as world history 2.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. At the same time, and there's no arrow there because it doesn't necessarily lead to
It's just
another course. Yeah. Mhm.
Great. That's what I was hoping.
And we probably, and I'm going to assume when it was put in a few years ago that little bubble was made and no one thought about arrows,
Yeah, no, that's
but
fair.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair.
Yep. All right, what page am I on?
14.
Okay,
A student waived into a higher level course must remain in the course until the end of quarter one.
yes.
So you cannot drop the course during the ad drop period if you override.
I believe that's past the ad drop period. The student must remain in. Student waived into a higher level course must remain to the course until the end of quarter one. Right,
But then they can change that to quarter.
they can change after.
But so it's if you override into a higher level course, and then you get into the higher level course, and you realize that you're way in over your head, and you want to drop the course. It's the same that you have to stay in until the end of quarter one.
That's just after it's after the ad drop date. And what we're trying to prevent is people just doing a lot of moving in, moving out. And like, usually after ad drop is 3 weeks in, they've taken some assessments at that point. We sometimes have situations where I've had situations where a student is teetering on, I'm not sure if I want to stay in this higher level course, but I haven't had my big assessment yet. So I might say, let's wait until that, and then we can make exceptions to that. So it's a case by case basis, really. But what we're trying to avoid is I'm going to stay in this higher level course, and I realize I'm getting, I'm teetering on getting a B minus, but there's 2 weeks left in the quarter. So if I drop down, I'm gonna, and I'll be fine. It just, what we want is for students to kind of make that commitment. It's in there. It's everything we do is a case by case basis. Obviously I wouldn't do anything that would harm a student.
If you overrode your counselors, whatever, and
Yep.
are taking a higher level class, you have the same ad drop period. So
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The first few weeks, no.
you overrode it.
Nope.
Now you're stuck with it for
No.
the first quarter. And I was
No.
like, well, I guess that we won't be over.
No,
it.
you're not that tough yet. During that ad drop period, it's kind of, it's certainly, all of this is, the whole point is to have a conversation with the counselor. And so that the ideal goal would be that they're in the exact course they belong in from the get-go. So as long as they're kind of talking with their counselor, those first few weeks of ad drop, they might get there and say, I wavered into this and I love it. And 2 days in, no way. Then they drop it. Then they drop. It's not a big deal. That is after, the 3 weeks. And, sometimes we have students that it's difficult to make that decision. And if we give them this, there needs to be a deadline, then it helps them with that decision, because it's, in the grand scheme of things, the honors versus CP is not, we all probably can't remember what we took in high school for honors versus CP, but in the moment, it's a huge deal, and it's really stressful. And that kind of was designed to just say, you made a decision, we're going to stick it out. You're going to, let's just focus on the schoolwork and not about, but if I do this and I do this and I do that, people overthink their
Playing the game
Yes.
rather than
and they just overthink, like, what is my transcript going to look like? So,
thank you.
Yep.
Clarifies.
For what it's worth, you may not need to deal with this. This may be just like this conversation thing, but I think that whole thing is only confusing on that page because you've got this levels bulleted, those levels that are all aligned left. And if they, like, the courses dropped after these timeframes, will have a final grade with W. That's its own thing. If the bullet had indented and if the sub bullet's indented, we would know it was.
oh, you want me to do that?
I would do that.
This is up to you. I'm just saying that might
Actually, I would.
why it's that might be why.
I would push and clarify that language, because I read it very clearly, like the student needs to stay in, put in.
So a student went into
A sub bullet, like
I
if it
think
were
so. My
indented
question,
in.
I think that
so if I just said after the ad drop period, a student waived into a higher level course.
Yeah. Yep.
I have it right there.
feel better.
I feel better. Thank you. After you
I
look
would
at this so
recommend
many
you
times, you
take
start to
it.
go.
Julie, I'm really gonna strongly recommend you take the edit back to the department chair meeting and make sure everybody is interpreting it the same way. Yeah, that's a good point. Because we're doing wordsmithing right here on the spot. We've raised a good question. There seems to be a little bit of lack of clarity around it. I think it's very important to go back and make sure everybody's clear. And if it means that they have to stay until the end of the quarter because they have elected to take this on, then so be it. But we just want to make sure everybody's saying the same thing. And if they can drop out earlier, then so be it. But just make sure everybody is going to line up behind that. So you're not
Okay.
so trying to manage that on the fly.
Yep, I added that in, but I will make sure that Samantha is agreed with that language.
Quick add you could make is,
So can I ask a question? You have the document. There's a lot here that obviously you've been thinking about, and I got some questions late in the day, and it was a really crunched weekend. And why don't we leave this in circulation for another week and send us the comments, because there's a lot to work through here, and I don't think we're in a little position tonight to make a decision.
Well, are there any?
Okay.
I'm go for it, but I'm also perfectly comfortable approving this. I just want to make that clear. I think it's good conversation to have, because we never get to dive that deep
Right.
into it, but it doesn't mean that we're not in support necessarily. I see what you're saying
But I
about
think
bringing
there's
that
a
back.
lot of lack of clarity comments where the determination of what is may make a difference in some people's decision to vote.
Fair.
So I'll leave that open.
With you, are you asking for changes or are you just asking for referral and
just a title, it's just a mismatch between the media literacy and civic action in the pathways doesn't match the digital and media literacy title is a course description. I didn't know. Like, so I thought maybe it was just a mistitle. And
It's
so I'm not
probably a
trying to hold
mistitle in the
people
chart. It's a
on
mistitle.
mistitle. And if we're voting on it, like, if we need more time, I'm not supposed to take more time.
That would be in the chart.
Functionally, our vote of the program studies is basically an acknowledgement that what's there substantively is, appropriate for our students, right? The wordsmithing and the details that, we're not approving all that language. We are separately approving the policy graduation requirements.
That's helpful.
But the program of studies is, a support for moving forward, right? And yes, it's a living document, there are going to be changes.
I updated it. Yep.
Are we able to approve tonight and say that it is if Julie were to bring this back to department heads and some of what we thought was wordsmithing is actually a substantial change, then it would come back to us. I just don't want to necessitate having this big conversation again and Julie coming back again and all of that.
Well, it's coming back for graduation.
I'm glad it's just Mary. It's never smooth.
Well, the policy, the program of studies doesn't have to come back, just the graduation requirements has to come back.
No, because the question that brought us to this point is in program studies, not in the graduation requirement. But again, you make a good point. If this is first read on graduation requirements, and we're going to take a vote on first reading, it's all coming back together again anyway. If you're more comfortable making that go back, I can support that.
We covered a lot of territory here.
You did, yeah.
And did a lot of language analysis, and it's all a big conversation. It just doesn't feel like a finished product to me.
I can support that if you're comfortable with it.
Are we
holding
holding
up? Are we holding?
Just your two
So they started a month early this
all good.
time.
It's all good.
Why we started a month early is that
They started a month early.
guess we usually do this in January.
Well, because I would argue that if the lines in the chart don't mean anything, then the lines in the chart can come out now. Why got you wait a whole year if it's just a simple reformatting? Sure. Because
My arrows? It makes
well,
arrows.
I would say if we reflect and go back and look at the notes of the conversation, there's a lot of things that are just there because they're there,
Mhm.
but there's general agreement that they shouldn't be there.
So why not take one
We have
more
to
meeting?
wait. If you don't have a fully approved program of studies until the graduation requirements get approved, why not go back, process through, similar to what we did with the wellness policy, similar to what we do with the ed plan, go back and process through all these pieces, clean it up and bring it back and let's get it done.
You won't see that chart. You'll see it next tape.
No, I mean, it's like,
I like the flow chart.
I like the flow chart.
I just want to make sure the arrow is all played. There's supposed to happen.
I can support that.
I have
And that way we can look at what we said is in flight tonight. To make sure it's committed to the.
That seems fair.
Right?
Can I make a motion then?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, I move that we approve the proposed addition to the graduation requirements policy to put it out for public comment and move it to a second read.
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you for bringing this back. Thank you. I just got conflated with some other things in a confusing time in the spring, and I'm glad that it's coming back and we're starting over.
Yeah, the only comment I'll make is I'd be interested if anybody, and this is anybody, because this applies to all kids moving up, has a preference or a argument for the 0.5 years or a 1 year appointment. If there's public comment on that.
All those in favor? Didn't see others.
Do we have to vote to table or?
No, because we're not putting a motion on.
Thank you for your time. Thank
You.
All appreciate it. And now we'll move on to the budget. Want to set the stage real quick and
Yeah,
answer questions to the end, or how do we want to?
let us go through the overview. We put together a few slides just to walk through the document, but I think we're gonna work with both the budget document for the details and just the overview slide. And the overview slides will likely look very familiar. Consistency. So you'll look at that. And how we've come to label it over the years is just kind of our discussion, right? So today is the discussion. So the first thing I'll say before we even roll into an overview is that, and we talked a little bit about it at the beginning. This is not a budget recommendation. This is not our budget. This is a tentative preliminary budget based on those early projections for some of our large key drivers and initial inputs from the principals on what they foresee for next year. Our key drivers aren't even close to being settled. So this is intended not to grow. We've never really grown from the tentative, but I think if we back out of our regional, our local context and look at the national, like there's just a lot going on in the world. So who knows what's coming our way. But we can give you a projection on where we think some of our, I want to call them problems, our challenge areas are, and areas that are going to need our focus and attention, and areas that I think are just pretty traditional carry forward or maintenance of effort pieces. We'll just tag team and have a conversation about it. So it's our preliminary budget.
So I'll just add another quick just note for new members and in general, when we go through this first read, any clarification questions you guys have, things like that, please feel free to bring that up. But, in terms of debating the merits of, one direction or another, I would just caution everyone to, sort of absorb and then, bring those back for our next meeting. I don't think it's something where we want to debate them, certain either merits or really much else about the budget itself. So clarification questions are great. And then I would just recommend as a committee, for the entire committee, that we absorb this, come back with questions. Those questions to be directed to Pam or Michelle. And again, this is literally just a broad start. These numbers are not final. So again, for everyone who may be listening online, I would just heed that advice as well, that this is a tentative budget and very much a starting point.
Yeah, I have a clarifying question on that one.
Sure.
So, because I have my third question, because you said on clarifying questions, because you said, feel free to bring them up. Do you want us to hold our questions till the end of the presentation? Do you want us to ask them as we're going, or how do you, that's my first clarifying question.
I can answer that. I think it's ideal we hold until the end so we can get through the presentation itself.
Okay. And the second one is just that the bottom bullet on there said that feedback from tonight will inform next steps. So if there's a specific ask of us, then it's appropriate to share an opinion on directionality.
Yeah, and where anyone
But otherwise,
asking for our committee's feedback,
Okay.
yes.
but otherwise, just take it in. And
Otherwise, again, never a hard and fast rule.
Yeah.
But
I just want to make sure I'm clear. Thank you.
just to set the stage of, this is very early in the process.
Just give me a quick second, slight technical difficulty. I mean, we're working on a shared doc. I pull up the old one. You know, what happens is it uploads it to the, nope, mine went back to the original changes. But mine has something the office and, oh, really? Give me a quick second. Anyone needs a stretch break, this is a great opportunity.
So, you know, I was. Right.
I'd be caught in the abyss. Do the rest of the changes there, it's just on slide 2 that well. Ones that I don't. You feel probably a lot less than me. Like. It looks to do us, yeah, because we like if there's I have generally so experience it gets all right, if it gets I have it as a 7 year now. Yeah, I just changed it again. Okay, so I think we're good, those we don't chat. Okay. No, I understand. Yeah, those are good. I think. We should ring them at least I clear. You know. I can now. I love a shared editing link, but for some reason they doesn't always. Excuse me, but I'm going to this again. Just to preface this with, we had one of those really fun online editing. Did you save it? Where did it get saved? Shoot. So hopefully we have resolved the problem. Apologize for any glitches along the way. So I think what we were trying to launch with is this is just a start. And it's going to take wait for Lindsay.
Well, and Nadia.
Oh, yeah.
Structure is over.
They're waiting for me. It's always how we get there. This would work.
We better redo that.
One's school. Wednesday, 17th.
We pull that, we can probably talk about all Nadia. Yeah, it's another topic. One of the decisions is we have December 16th and as a tentative meeting if we need it. So it's up to the group to decide whether we need it or not. If you want to do the program of studies, graduation requirements, public comment plus public hearings separate from your second vote, then I would say add it in so you can land on a program of studies by that January 13th meeting. if you want to do just public comment and then create an opportunity on the 13th when you're going to vote, comment to be made at the meeting, do it that way too. Other than that, we don't have agenda items for the 6th. As of the meeting. So you can just marinate on that while we go through. This shouldn't take us very long. Where do you have thoughts right now?
Oh, I do, but I don't, yeah, I
Now you opened that can of worms.
Let's hear your thoughts.
But my thought is just that December is an incredibly busy month for every single person, and I don't think that adding adding anything that would impact our vote that won't take place on the 17th should be done, because we can't, I don't want the public to miss an opportunity given how busy it is. And we also have an extra meeting this month anyway with the public hearing on that. So it's just
a half an hour at the beginning of the budget hearing and start your budget hearing at 6:30. I mean, we just went out with public, we went with publication of 6 p.m., but we can send it. It's up to you. So think about it.
I think that is a better idea. Half hour early.
Yeah.
To just get through anything quickly that we need to vote on.
So we'll put the clarification that it does start at 6. We'll have a 30-minute business meeting ahead of it. Traditionally do that. I think that Essex Flight starting a little bit later anyway. And then we can open up our budget hearing at 6:30.
There's precedent for that. We've
done that before. Yeah.
I'd be in favor of that over an additional medic meeting. I'm the only one saying this. I feel like I'm losing my mind.
We can go with that.
We can vote.
Yep. Okay.
Sounds like a great idea.
Feel like I'm going to tell everybody a bedtime story about the tentative budget. What I was going to say is we've kind of established that this is preliminary. This is just a starter set. There's going to be iterations of it along the way. It's not a recommendation. It's not something that we're proposing. It has the basic nuts and bolts of where we think we're going to land on some things. But the reason we do it, and it is very, very early, is because it's dictated by the regional agreement. And if you go to the third bullet, it's so where I think many of the things that we have in place and some of the things that we're evolving around now is just to keep all the parties informed. So we're not pulling up at the end of February and saying, here's your 10% budget. And it's the first time anybody's hearing it, right? So it's really just to keep the information flowing and prevent surprises and let everybody know early on what all of the entities are dealing with and trying to manage. So people can consider that as we are forming our budget. We'll get information on the December hearing. We have another hearing right at the beginning of February. I think it's February 3rd or 4th. It was in 2027 today doing a calendar, so I don't even know what year it is anymore. But the December meeting will inform the iterations that take place through February in the information at the February meeting and all our public meetings up until the final adopted budget, which is scheduled for the 10th. Will help us come up with our final recommendation. The recommended budget usually comes out that second meeting in January. That's when we're going to try to start closing in on some of these variables. So basically, we just pulled a few bullet points based on the narrative that Shell provided you with the budget document. And we are always open to creative ways of trying to explain the maintenance of effort concept or the level services concept. It doesn't mean that we don't get creative and change things. It just means we try to work within the same parameters of finance, class size, scope, course offerings, and services provided in the prior year. So we're not looking to add major pieces to the budget, but we are looking to try and evolve our program and meet our goals as established in our improvement plans within the confines of the budget that we have. A level look at staffing is we aren't looking for new or expanded staffing additions next year. And that's got the big caveat. That doesn't mean that we aren't going to have potentially new positions or repurpose an existing FTE at one level to be used for a priority find at another level. Those are the pieces we'll work through over the next few months. So last year's example was we were able to reduce a staff position at the high school and use it to solve an issue at the elementary school. We didn't reduce our FTE count, but we moved it around to address priority needs. We are looking to add 0.3 staffing this year. It's a SLP. Yes. So speech language pathologist that we had reduced 2 years ago. So it's a reinstatement, and some of it is part has gone into contracted service, part has gone to fellow. Next year, it looks like the total outcome of the inputs and outputs is that it's 0.3 addition to our overall staff. So that would be the only direct area of growth that we see at this point. And then enrollment it's consistent. Class sizes remain consistent with school committee benchmarks, so we're not seeing any issues there. And it looks like it's stabilizing. I don't think we're seeing what you had said, great surges or great drops. Not that the head count's exactly the same, but I think we are plateauing. And I think if you look at the MSBA enrollment study, which is much more in depth than our enrollment tracking, it will be showing the same thing with slight growth coming over the next 10 years. You want to run them through the numbers?
Sure. So the FY 27 tentative budget is coming in at a total of $35,007,499 or a 7.39% increase. And that equates to $2.4 million. And that's broken down in the summary page in the tentative budget guide. The revenue outlook, we are projecting revenues to increase 3.87, which is a total of 169,200. Most of that is in Chapter 70. A little bit of that is investment earnings. And then the apportionment formula is based on, our regional agreement and QB and U.S. Census. Use of reserves, this budget applies 600,000 of D&D and 150,000 of OPEB if needed, which is the same level as this year. So basically, when you're looking at the percentage increase, you're looking at apples to apples. We could take out that 750,000, but then it's going to make your budget go up to 10.6% increase. And then you're looking at almost a false number because it's not equivalent to what we have this year. So certainly those numbers are up for discussion, but that's what we included at this point.
And sorry, what does that leave our reserves as?
Our E&D would be approximately just under 500,000. And our stabilization would be untouched. And the 150,000 in OPEB would just decrease our amount of contribution for FY27. We still have, on the next slide, we're going to have almost $8 million in OPEB at the moment this year. So the use of those reserves, as I mentioned, it comes out, the overall budget or the overall assessment is a 7.94% increase, because our budget's 7.39. Our revenues are not going up at the same exact rate. They're going down a little bit less. So our assessment increase is 7.9. And the breakout for Manchester is 7.86. Essex is 8.07. The spending highlights, contractual, this budget includes a 2.5% COLA for non-META employees, as well as a 2.5% COLA for both units within the META group. For teachers, the Unit A, it also includes steps, columns, and it is the final year of the scale restructuring. Originally, we started with 13 steps the teachers could go through. Now we have reduced that to 11, but we did that by eliminating the first 2 steps, 1 step each year. So we'll finally be down to 11 steps. And the teaching assistants are also getting the 2.5% COLA, but because last year we had such a large retroactive adjustment because we basically had 2 years of COLAs in there, the overall increase is 1.9%. Our contract cycle, both of these units under META are negotiated through June of 27.
So next year, during fiscal 27, we will begin negotiations for the following contract. Not sure what that looks like at this point. And then, as Pam mentioned, the only staffing change this includes is bringing that SLP, the speech and language pathologist, back to a 1.0 that it was 2 years ago. It's a net change of actually 0.3, not 0.03. And we have been filling that with contracted people and a fellow this year. So it's not the services haven't been provided. We're just finding we really need a full-time person at that. Onto our health insurance and benefits. One of the primary drivers of this budget is when you look at all of our insurance and benefits, which includes our retirement assessment, our health insurance renewal, our other non-health insurance, our liability insurance and all that, workers' comp, we're looking at an overall increase of 16.6%. But that includes a 20% rate increase for our health insurance. We have not received solid estimates at this time, but we're going off of the Maya recommended rate, which both towns have also heard from Maya at this point for health insurance renewals. So really, we're kind of in the dark there, but we are working with our brokers. I was going to say, we need to give our broker an update as well. As a little bit of a tangent, we did go out to bid for a health insurance broker. We had 3 firms that we interviewed. We had them in. We met with the Hayek group as well. And basically, we were all in agreement to stay with our current broker. We've had a good relationship with them. We've been a little, how should I say it, a little hesitant to think outside of the box. So we're thinking we really need to have some conversations with them to think outside the box this year. We're at desperate times with these health insurance rates, and as everyone is, it's not us alone by any means. So we're going to have some great conversations with them this week.
Did our broker know that you were interviewing others?
Yes.
Could you elaborate on how you came to the decision to stay with the current?
Perfect. You want to expand on that? Sure.
So the one we thought would get a lot of traction didn't get traction
Right.
in the interview process. They were more traditional and I think less brought fewer outside of the box ideas to the table. So we did an initial round with 3 firms. Are we allowed to say the name?
Sure.
Yeah. So
Public.
Force,
Borslow.
USI and One Digital.
Yes.
So we eliminated Borslow out of the first round of interviews, and I think One Digital presented a lot of intriguing options that people wanted to probe further on, and USI had similar items on their list, but were probably more knowledgeable of some of our risk aversion from past years and some of the obstacles that are in our contract. So long story short, we brought them back for a second round with Hayek because they really wanted to probe more on some of the newer ideas that were being put on the table. While that was happening, we did some reference checks just to make sure that what we were seeing in the interviews was true. And I guess I would probably summarize it to be respectful to all parties. I think USI came back and really outlined some things that we could dig deeper into this year. And it felt like One Digital continues more of a sales pitch without a lot of specifics or details about how they would get us there, except to keep telling us we would have to have very hard conversations. So I think everyone was looking for them to take us to the next level and lay out some breadcrumbs, not give away proprietary secrets, of course, but less of a pitch and more of a problem solve. So I think when all was said and done, the fact that they both outlined similar potential pathways forward, but one prepared with greater detail and knowledge of us and had a relationship of trust, I think that tipped the scale.
I think what's very exciting about it is we have articulated that we have to do this together with the association. It's not something that we can just do to them, or there aren't many things that can just be done unilaterally. And I think it was a very healthy conversation with that group to look creatively at some options that may not have been so minimal. So I think we're well positioned. And the broker doesn't decide the renewal rate. It can give us pathways for change. Then you're saying, yeah, is that there? It's great.
We have new members who might not know what HIAC is, and we're talking.
Health Insurance Advisory Committee. So it's a labor management group that a municipality has to have. So if we were a town, we would be if we were a single municipal district, like the town of Essex Public Schools, we would be part of the town of Essex HIAC group. So we would go as representatives whenever they were talking about healthcare. Because we are our own municipality, it's our management team with community representatives. So there's both teachers and TA representatives on this group.
There is any preference for, because our district is relatively small, for school districts going together as a way of creating, I don't know. Getting better
Talked
costs.
about, in that, like, we've mentioned it even to the town administrators. I don't know that there's a lot of will behind it. I think it's something we would be interested in exploring. That's what they would call a captive, right? Basically, you set up your own small group like a mini Maya. Which would mean we would probably be getting into managing. So I think we have to grow with others in, but I think interesting ideas like that are going to be on the table. And we're going to look at Maya again as well. So that's a little bit of a tangent.
So who is our broker?
USI. I think what they both have in common, and why USI was interesting to us originally, is they're big in the private sector. So they bring private sector ideas. Where we hit some stumbling blocks is private sector ideas and collective bargaining agreements don't always mesh well, and we don't always have the agility to make quick year-to-year moves with the plan design that will result in cost savings. So that's why it's important to partner with them so that we can come to some solutions, and it may be a multi-step process where there's something we can do this year and then something we have to take up in negotiations next year. But I think everyone in that room, the reps from the association, understand that we have to open up our minds. And it may not be able to continue as it is forever. Okay. Back to the end of budget.
And I guess just one thing, because we are planning on a public hearing on this, is if we come back now and say, okay, there's going to be another increase and 20% of it is due to insurance, and that is, I think, more or less what happened last year, right? Give or take. I could expect the town saying, well, is this the new reality? Every year you're going to come and ask for this. Not because you're expanding your program, but simply because health insurance costs are going to increase 20% every year. That's going to be hard. So I recommend having something that we can offer to say, we recognize this and we're thinking of it.
Both of our municipalities are dealing with
With the
20%
same.
increase as well.
Okay, so if you don't think it will come as a surprise, they'll just be like, okay, well, it's in the same plan.
Correct.
Yeah, and we're using what they're being quoted. So from that initial, what do we call it, number crunchers meeting, everyone was kind of sharing what they're hearing initially from their reps. And Maya is telling the towns and most municipalities to use 20% as a placeholder for next year.
Okay.
And our number, we were 2% lower than Essex and 5% higher than Manchester last year. Did you? I can't break it, right? Maybe a little bit more than that. We can ask Ann after a little bit. So yeah, I don't think it's a surprise.
Okay.
I mean, along those lines, it might be helpful for the hearing to explain like what these brokers are seeing and larger context for the system is essentially broken and it's not serving the towns, it's not serving us, it's not serving many small businesses. So I think providing that kind of zoomed out we know lots of industries and sectors are struggling because of these ridiculous increases. Is important context for the conversation.
So yes, so overall, the health insurance number here is a $1.1 million increase. So that's almost half of our increase for next year is under the insurance category. The rest of our increases are not significant, but I do want to call a few out to you. Curriculum and legal costs. We increased the budget for $25,000 for anticipated legal costs related to our MENA negotiations with the union. I looked back a few years ago, and that's approximately what it cost us over our budget, our standard budget. So we included that. $40,000 was added to pilot new science and math curriculum in FY27 for potential adoption the following year. Technology, we have a $26,000 increase for a 3-year iPad lease to replace outdated kindergarten through grade 2 devices. As of next year, they will not be able to run the iReady assessment software because they're no longer upgradable. So that will be a sweeping replacement plan. And at the end of the 3 years, we will own them, but and probably 3 years after that, we'll be looking to replace them again. So that I'm hoping at some point we can get a very definitive technology replacement. I mean, we have a plan, but I want it definitive. Like, okay, next 5 years, this is what we do. 5 years after that, this is what we do. So it's almost consistent. We can kind of fit it in with the budget we have. That's my goal for the next year here. But technology has just that one significant increase. Special education, which is actually a surprise. We have fewer out-of-district placements projected for next year. So we're looking at a tuition and transportation decrease at almost 2%. It does remain highly volatile. Our placements change. We are projecting some out-of-district placements right now that on our radar. If those don't come to fruition, we may even have a larger increase in that category. But so we are budgeting the ones that are on our radar at this point. But a matter of hours, something could change. I mean, tomorrow we could come to you and say we have 3 more out-of-district placements that we weren't anticipating. And I think just in some conversations we've had today, and something that strikes me in general, like special education, the line in total may be decreasing, but it's a distributed cost, so it appears in the personnel line, right? So if we have to shift people around or add resources, it can show up in personnel, it can show up in tuition, and it can show up in transportation. So the cost of tuitions isn't going down 2%. We're that's increasing.
We're not increasing. We're increasing negative 2% over last year because of a reduction in heads. Our personnel lines work very similarly, right? I think sometimes they can be deceiving because what we're reporting is not what people's raises are or their cost of living personal increases are. It's the line increase. So within the teacher line, 5.4 is the increase over last year. But within those lines, you have people advancing at 2.5, and you might have somebody with a column move who's going up 9%. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a composite and not a direct. Same thing with the 2.5% COLA. In teaching assistants, their personal growth isn't going to be 1.91. It's just the way that line moves from year to year. So it's just something to keep in mind when we're talking about these numbers. And I'll go in and edit that. There's an extra zero. So what we'll be working on in December and January is really we're going to monitor and revise. I think we can't say enough. We are 7 months before the start of the fiscal year. And most of our 2 largest variables, so special education, which is fluid, we really start to see the full picture of what next year will look like in the spring when we're starting our renewal meetings and assessing. I mean,
there isn't a day that goes by that Allison isn't monitoring and measuring and trying to project, but as the year rolls on, we'll get a clearer and clearer picture of what the needs are for next year. We're gonna obviously be working on our health insurance renewal rates and looking at some options there and trying to think outside of the box to see if our rate renewal through Harvard Pilgrim stays in that 20% range, what if there are any other levers we could pull, and if not this year, be lined up to be able to do something next year. Sped projections are on our list for monitoring. And then I think one thing we want to assess as we go through this is our OPEB contribution strategy. It is mapped out. The formula is mapped out in the contract. But when we were talking on the finance subcommittee meeting today, we arrived at that formula for mutual benefit. It was asked of us to solve this long-term funding problem in preparation for an override ask. We did. And in doing that, we had to work collaboratively with the association to change the healthcare plan to figure out how to fund it. So instead of that money flowing just back into the budget, it flew into what the district determined was its financial priority, which was funding the OPEB trust fund. So we would have it for a rainy day when retiree healthcare costs began to put so much pressure on the budget that it was causing high growth and starting to push things out. So we're saving at a pretty high clip for a rainy day, and it is raining now. It would be my argument. So is it time to look at it, using it for what it was intended to bring relief to the growth in the insurance number? So I think that's something I don't think we did a recommendation yet, but I think we're seriously looking at that. We'll be seeing some feedback from this group as we go. If we're putting away close to $800,000 this year, $762,000
This year, 762.
we're saving at a pretty high rate. So
And I wouldn't recommend necessarily dipping into the actual OPEB trust fund. I would just recommend reducing the amount of the contribution or slowing the contribution because we're in some pretty difficult times right now.
And then, of course, continuing to keep everybody informed and work collaboratively and see if there's any common division that we just have our upcoming meetings sketched out. So that's the high level overview and open to, we can go through the budget document if there's questions in the budget document.
So we can go around and around if you want to. Well, we should start.
I was looking at the key budget drivers and just curious about them. Things below 10%, I guess I'm less focused on, but I just want to look at some of the higher numbers. So I'm sure as we discussed, but for example, facilities and custodians, we're projecting close to 13% increase, right? Can you comment briefly on what's the driver for that?
The facilities and custodians, last year, our final budget reduced the position of our facilities manager. So we took that out of the final budget for the final FY26 numbers. We did leave some money in there for, actually, I should say, we left some money in the general budget to compensate others for doing some of that work. So we intended to hire a half-time technician, maintenance technician, and as well as give a bump up to the 2 facilities people that are assuming more responsibilities. So we did that. So they received increases more than that 2.5%. And then we have that half-time position. We did take an overall cut of the full-time person and parsed out some of it, cut some of it as well.
That's not. It sounds like you're saying it's not really an increase, it's.
Yeah, so these are some of the nuances, right?
Yeah, we just.
So the line has increased, but it's still less than it
Was 2 years ago, basically.
Maybe that would help is if we had the column for FY25 budget before, so you can show if there's something. Right, because if you're just comparing 2 years, you lose that.
Yeah. No, and I do something similar, anything like over 2-3%, I look into it, like, why is that? And I need to know, if there's not a good explanation of why that's
Trend
there.
or bad trend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just like the line, 2 lines above, right? Stipends, student activities, coaching. Is there something particular or is that just a new trend?
Another shift.
Part of that is a shift, part of that is just the stipends going up. Last year, we also had retro. We gave them 2 years of 2.5% increases because we didn't give them the year before. So that was a matter for the stipends. We also had a shift with our athletic director. She was a 0.6 athletic director, 0.4 teacher. We transferred her because of the overall, she assumed some of the facilities oversight as well. So she is now a 1.0 athletic director and no longer in the 0.4 teaching category. So there's another shift between categories there.
I'm chuckling because we used to, you would have got it. We used to have 3 or 4 years back with the budget, the actual, so you could track all it, because yes, it's showing, what it's showing is the percentage increase over the budget, adopted budget from last year. And what we did, for instance, in that facilities line was take the full reduction out and held some of the additional funds in a little bit of a report. So when we added it back in, instead of showing a reduction over the year before, it's showing the increase. It's just,
Yeah, because that's what I'm saying. You lose that and that's important color. So if you had that other column, you'd be, oh, okay, now I understand.
and sometimes I try to look at the dollar figure.
The other example of that is with the SLP role.
Yep.
We're adding back a 0.TE, but I remember how shocking the contractor rates were when we were filling that with hourly contractors. And I would be confident guessing that adding 0.3 is a much more affordable solution than continuing the contracts those out.
So,
Then you would have seen the direct correlation of the increase to a decrease in contracted services, except our contracted services just keep skyrocketing.
Yeah.
So you're not seeing the direct decrease there, unfortunately.
Yes, I guess, and then just the last thing, remind me, because we discussed this a few meetings ago. Are we seeing a projected increase or decrease in enrollment? And I know it's still too early to tell, but which direction do we?
It was an increase, wasn't it? And I remember that because it was the first, it is now starting to move back in the other direction because we've had several years in a row an increase of.
Yes, if you look at page 8, you have the enrollment history trend. It actually went up, the resident growth around 3.6% this year, which I was actually surprised at myself.
Which it had been neutral or falling since for the last 12 years.
Yes.
bending the curve.
Lindsay, you want to go next, or you want to pass, we can come back?
I think I'm still wrapping my mind around a lot of stuff as a new school committee member, so some of my questions should be taken offline. I completely just say so. But I mean, just on a high level, I'm very concerned about dipping into reserves, same level as we did last year. And I'm aware that the school committee policy was to keep reserves at 8% of the operating budget. Is that correct?
I think it was a maximum of 8%.
Maximum of 8%. And then I believe the last update, it was 5% as of this year. So next year, if we use the same reserves as projected in this budget as we did last year, what will our reserves be as a percent of our operating budget if this is the budget that
Will be low, but yeah, I mean, we need to look at what next year's budget is, so obviously, and
It's like,
it'll be late.
Which in that policy says that it's a target of 8%. Yeah. Purposefully did not set a hard and fast max or minimum recognition of that there would be times that we needed flexibility.
Yeah, and I understand it's an exceptional year, but I also know that I'm under the impression that reserves are important as far as a borrowing power. Reserves are important for rainy day if there's disruption in federal funding, for example. So I'm nervous about dipping into reserves to a degree where if 8% is a target, what is our floor as a committee? And I don't know if we have an answer to that right now, right?
No, I think it's a good
Yes,
point, but also not like, because we're not there yet.
So,
That's what I was gonna say.
Oh, am I jumping the gun?
well, that's,
I would just say that with like,
Thought we were talking about reserves. I thought we were talking about high level concerns, and I'm concerned about these.
I think
right,
that's,
but, and then to Chris' point, we're not gonna debate it. We're just taking it, yes, like, because we're not, like, anything we're gonna debate now, because we don't have any specific numbers, it's like a pretend to, it's like a hypothetical debate. And so until we have,
I hear you.
but I think that the like general comfort level is.
That's what I'm
Totally
expressing, general comfort level.
So it's easy to debate. Just
yeah,
get-
yeah, so like if for some reason the world stopped, it could. It stopped today and we had to go forward with this budget.
Well, we wouldn't, 'cause the world would have stopped.
Wow. The world stopped, but the school district continues. You know it, what?
Manchester-Essex regional.
Are you comfortable with turning in a 7.39 or are we looking for cuts?
But you're not asking us that question right now.
right, not asking that
This,
question.
this is what has gone
Yeah.
through Pam and my mind as we're trying to put this together.
Right. So it's totally appropriate to ask like the question, but to start. And like, because I have the same concerns, I mean, we all do. Right.
I'm not
But-
debating.
right.
With in general.
Yeah, my only point, and thanks, because you asked is it appropriate enough, so my only point was. At this point, since it's so early, I don't think it's fruitful to talk about. Like where, what is the number that would leave us at, because this is so early that the number here isn't even. Could change so much.
She said low, right?
Yes.
That's the lower's not the number. I know.
Exactly.
I maybe I need to go back to math class.
Yeah,
I'll share the truth, one of the things that I had said on the call this afternoon, I would, and then reiterate, but let me start by reiterating a point that Michelle made. You said it quietly, but I think it's important. Had we not advanced with it holding steady the amount of reserves from last year to this year, it would have it will make it look like our growth in expenditures is much higher than it really is, right? So if you take that plug out, you're going to come up with a 10% plus number. But our expenditure levels haven't grown 10%. It's going to artificially inflate that growth number. So this gives you a more realistic picture of how our expenditures are growing
That's really helpful.
over the year. And then I also said, and I feel pretty strongly, I think it would be irresponsible to pull that plug now and try to pass that on, given all that's going on in terms of the collective financial challenges that are happening. And this will be something we can debate well into January and February, but I think we spent a long time trying to explain the trajectory of reserve use at a time where it was much less and our expenditure growth was more in that 3 to 4% range reliably, and trying to make the case and lined up to do a correction of reserves. And I think we went in a markedly different direction as a body in terms of the importance of maintaining a high level of reserves and feeling like they needed to be spent down and they shouldn't be holding money on districts. So now we're dealing with the implications of those policy shifts, which is fine. And I think if we want to line up again, we should probably look 3 to 4 years out for a reserve correction. And I think we can get there.
Just one thing to follow up on that, because right now I'm not seeing we're going to face dramatically better economic conditions for the next 3 years. Right? The likelihood that the current federal government is going to increase educational spending seems remote. And so I hear what you're saying, and that makes perfect sense to me. if we have to make the same argument for not just next year, but the next 3 years, are we being fiscally responsible as a school district?
Couple of thoughts.
And I mean, just high level, like,
Yeah, and-
can we sustain that?
You know, it's just my opinion that it's too early for us to really have these discussions because they're not meaningful yet, but that truly is just my opinion. So
I can give a very high level. If the federal if we're targeted by the federal government and the bottom falls out, I think we are in a whole different zone altogether because it's not just us, it's the state and who knows where we're at. So I don't think you get a federal funding collapse and never cut anything. I think it's going to sit. If we just look at our trajectory and what we can control and predict, I think there is a pathway forward where if will return approximately 50% of the reserves at the end of the year if we don't get too many surprises, meaning this fiscal year. And again, next fiscal year, like we never spend down to zero. We typically end with like $250,000 or $300,000 in reserves. So it's not going to grow the reserves, but it gives us some run time. So if we look at a multi-year use of the reserves, knowing we have stabilization for any facilities issues that we run into, I think we would be okay at this point, knowing what we know now, for the next 2 fiscal years. With a successful passage of Essex Elementary School, you will get an interest infusion into your stabilization account, which will allow that reserve to come up. But you'll also take off the table your major liability, which is the capital needs at Essex. And you'll start to fuel or feed your reserve accounts again and be prepared to have some money on hand if anything happens with the middle high school. That's going to push you in 930, where I think you should be looking at 2930 for your correction.
So I just want to say, I appreciate that, and I hope we can make that happen. I'd love us to model that out so that we can see it and feel confident that we have some sort of plan that gets us there. I think we should take that on as a group or as a finance subcommittee group, either one.
But you don't know, I mean, anything could happen along the way.
That's fair. Thank you.
Then my only other question was that excess and deficiency number is reported as 600,000. But I thought in the previous report had reported it coming in at just over $1 million. And so can you just explain, and this is where I'm saying this conversation can be taken offline as a new member, like, how does that number work?
If you look at,
You don't have to explain that right now.
if you look at page 10.
Yeah.
It is the calculation. And right now, for our most recent certification was 1.3 million. We used 600,000 for the current budget. We brought it down. So our starting balance for this new certification was 776,000. As Pam mentioned, typically we turn back about 300,000 each year to replenish it. So we replenished about 295,000 through our closeout of FY25. And then, so we're expecting our certification to come in 1.1 million or just under 1.1 million. And then we're anticipating this is showing us using another 600,000 for next year, which would bring it down after our certification to 471,000.
Whatever's left over from last year.
Yep.
Gets into that pot. And then when it's certified, that's like the official numbers.
Yes.
Because things are always kind of changing.
Yeah, you only get one certification a year to make it official. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, if you don't have any further questions, it's definitely considered.
One of
What you?
the bullet points I left out because you were indulging me going off on my multi-year plan is that's where you want to start talking about how you can use OPEB to maybe lessen the blow of or minimize your total use of use OPEB to minimize your total use of BEP. But I think there is a pathway forward. You're ultimately going to be faced with, we'll all be faced with, you're going to use reserves or you're going to have to make cuts because I don't think we're going to be in a position to get a full, I don't know that we want to start talking about an override right now. And the size of it, I think, is always relevant.
I'm certainly not advocating for any cuts. If the bottom falls out of education, state and federal, I don't know that we'll have an option. I think it will be the sign that things will have to be done differently.
Mel, do you have any?
Yeah, long way to go. We'll fix it.
Speaking to that point, I think, I work in affordable housing, and then every year people talk about all these cuts going to happen to the program and whatnot, and they don't ever materialize because the alternative is so much worse. Like people in the streets. So from my perspective, I don't concern myself with that. I think, go with what you have, the information you have at this point, and put together the best budget you can. And if things happen, then we react accordingly. So, I have no specific questions. But I think it's just the budget is a sign of the times we're living in now. And clearly that, health insurance figure is a little out of control, but we're not surprised. So that's all I have to say.
I'm going to frame my question kind of differently. I've been trying to, I have been brought to thinking about this year's budget in which there's very little that is different or unexpected or unusual than last year or even the year before, but especially last year with the healthcare increases. And I've been brought to be thinking about this differently by my participation in our own town meeting and trying to follow what our town partners are doing a little more closely. So my question here is, I have right now three specific things that I want to know as a school committee member about how our town partners are handling their budgets for this year that will influence my consideration of what I'm comfortable with on a lot of these different areas. What is the appropriate vehicle for asking those questions? Is it to send them through our chair and vice chair? Is it to send them through our finance subcommittee? Is it to send them directly through you? Is it to go on my own and ask them? I don't feel like that's the best route. Perhaps it's to ask them at the public hearing. And you don't have to answer this right now either, but I have some really specific things that I want to hear from our officials in both towns, how they're choosing to address that will inform this. And I would love to hear it at the public hearing, but I don't want to put anyone on the spot in the moment. So my true question about the budget is, how do you want me to handle getting answers to those questions?
Talk about the year, send them over. And say, we'd love if you could speak to this at the public hearing. For that, I don't know.
Would you like me to share the questions that I have? Okay, the things that I want to understand, and I want to be really clear that however this comes through, I am trying to understand to inform. This can't come through snippy, it can't come through anything other than that. I want to understand, knowing that they have similar drivers like healthcare spikes and general inflation. I want to understand from our town partners, do they have any unusual or unexpected drivers of budget increase right now? I'm especially looking for information about the operating budget, not the planned out capital budget, unless there's something unusual this year about it. I would like to know where they're probably beginning their budgeting process with their departments as well. We're coming in, we're getting this very tentative, here is a maintenance of services level budgeting ask for us. Where are they starting with their town departments in terms of expectation? Are they starting at level? Are they starting from a position of cuts? Or I just want to understand. You may not be able to answer it all at once.
She knows the answer, she said.
I don't want to.
You don't want me to answer it. Okay, I understand.
I'm not the chair. I'm just reading out my question. I'm interested in understanding the comparison of current E&D balance against their their policy targets. And as the budget season progresses, how their reserve use is impacted versus their E&D balances or reserve balances versus their policy targets, because that's what we're considering here as well. And then finally, I really want to have a look, especially as we're opening this conversation about reducing our contribution to OPEB. I want to understand our town partners' input on that, because I know we have differing views on how that should be implemented, and I would like to know how our town partners OPEB contributions and plan for, meeting full funding of their OPEB liabilities compares with ours. I think that is a great opportunity for the open collaboration meeting to discuss shared OPEB strategy and understanding. But I do want to understand it so that I can have an informed understanding as we come to talk about these things here. Thank you for coming tonight.
I think those are great questions. I think that they're fair. I think we can pick them up on the 8th, and that's will be no surprises. But if we went through with our meeting next week, we could bring these questions and discuss them there. That way they wouldn't be surprised when you got into the public hearing if these came up.
Whatever, I'm leaning on Jake for input on that one. However you want to handle that. I do want to hear the answers in a public meeting. That would be great, or receive them by email, something that's accessible to all of us in that way. I would love to have this discussed openly in the public hearing. That's something that we don't often get, is the inputs and engagement that way.
Can I ask a question about the hearings? It's listed here as public hearing on a tentative budget, joint meeting with Essex and Manchester BOS and Finance Committee. Is the entire hearing a joint meeting in which the three entities sit and listen? Like what is the format of the hearing? Is it
We're just all doing, it's just the same one too.
They post in case they have a forum and have it.
so that they can attend and participate? But it's not a joint meeting.
Well, it's a joint meeting in the sense that we all have to, per public meeting laws, it would be considered. It's not like the joint meeting where we all sit around the table and have a shared agenda. We present the overview like we did here, and then we open it up for questions.
So this is telling me that
We should ask these questions then.
at that hearing,
It doesn't have to be just that.
Or
Ask
now,
us questions.
right, or now that they're on the table, we can give them to them in advance and say, hey, we're planning to ask you these questions at a meeting.
Yeah, but so are we meeting here?
I would strongly recommend we would prep that up in a collaboration group and not just say, hey, we want. The purpose of the meeting, whether we like it or not, or traditionally has been us to share and then take feedback. Not. So if we're going to change dramatically, I do think it's beneficial to have a meeting ahead of time to talk through the questions.
Again, I'm putting these out. I don't care what format it takes. This is just the information that I'm recognizing I need. And I feel like in recent years, I have felt that, and I've asked it in the ways that weren't effective to get that information. And so the thing that I care about is that whatever happens before, that it be given in a public format.
I don't know how I'll just share it, whether it's appropriate or not, I'll share. How I feel when I get those questions, which is if sometimes it elicits a return reaction. So if we're going to send those questions over, I think we need to be prepared to get some equally challenging questions, and then we can have to produce information and documentation on them. So that's why I think there's benefit if we want to revisit the 8th and bringing those questions on the 8th and having a conversation about the intent and the purpose. And how is the best way to have a public conversation about this? That way we can get a sense of what the return questions might be, because I don't want to be caught flat-footed on the 10th with some hard questions that I haven't even thought about yet. Because I don't know, I just want to set the right tone for the exchange.
I'm open to however, and I agree. I also want to share that we have rightly gotten criticism in recent years for it's not all within our control, but the fact that our public hearings have frequently become just everybody show up to state the thing that they don't want to have happen or encourage the thing that they do want to have happen, and we don't get enough of this. So if there is something that can be done, however you need to encourage this.
So Pam, I hear you. And given now that we have some specific questions on the table that we didn't have this afternoon or even at the beginning of this meeting, I think it makes sense to have that meeting on the 8th. And because I may raise another question to add to this too. What's the mechanism? Do I just rescind my prior? Do we negate our prior vote, or do I put a new motion on the
Motion
table?
to reconsider?
Motion to reconsider the prior. Yeah, there you go. There. That's the mechanism.
Breaking my
So motion to reconsider our prior vote about the December 8th tentative meeting.
Second.
Any discussion?
With this as a specific purpose, I think that if you feel that that's the best way to.
Yeah, we
And I will vote, I know, but that's why I'm voting in favor of reconsidering.
Would it help us feel more comfortable to send our delegates with specific, whatever the word is, representative with the specific question, so it's not so open-ended?
yeah, we will put
You have
these, we'll
four,
put
you
these
said you
on,
had one more.
we will put these on the agenda, right? The questions are on the table now. They're public. We'll put them on the agenda so everybody can, be aware of what's going to be discussed. Yes.
Did you have one more that you wanted to air?
Maybe when it comes around to me, but
Oh, sorry.
well, let's take the vote on the reconsideration. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, so before we leave here, let's make sure we have what the agenda is for the 8th then. Okay.
So now we're gonna reconsider it though.
We just did.
Let's keep going with questions real quick. When we
We
can
can vote on action.
talk about this.
So all we voted what was the vote that we were reconsidering?
You did vote to reconsider and then you
So now we need to vote on actually supporting. Okay, I get what you're saying. All right, so the motion on the table then now is no.
Move forward with.
Move forward with the 8th. So
Second.
all in favor? Oh, sorry. Any discussion? All in favor?
I do just have a bit of discussion. I'm not 100% sure that you originally asked what the best way to share this is, and I'm not 100% convinced that this is. I haven't had time to really think about. To be honest with you.
I think my original ask was simply, what's the best way to get this information without it, while going through proper channels and making sure everyone here at the table has access to the information.
Well, let's do this then. In terms of voting on the actual motion now that is on the table, why don't we hold that vote until after we all go around and see? Give you a little time and we'll see what other questions arise.
I would say, while it's fresh in my mind, if you would just let me say, it. I think it's easier to say these questions are coming up and these are things that the group is wondering about and would hope that we get some feedback on. We'd like to talk about and pose them on the 10th. I think that, as opposed to sending over written questions, it feels less formal and you can deliver it in a way that it stresses collaboration and that we're trying to get to some cooperative outcomes as opposed to starting to exchange information requests.
Except I don't
I know.
care. I literally just want to be able to have access. That is information that's going to inform my vote on this budget process.
I agree with Pam's point. I think that my initial understanding of this group was that was where these conversations would take place, and that in order for it to be a collaborative effort, we would not be talking just about the district's finances, but also the town's finances. And so to me, it seems like the perfect avenue for having those discussions.
Are we going around?
Sure.
Well, we are holding off on the vote for the December 8th meeting, joint meeting, until we've all run around to talk about the budget that we have.
I'm done with my budget.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, then I think it's my budget. Is it on me for the?
Let's see.
Okay, I just have three, small, well, I have three specific questions, that are probably not huge line items, but I'm curious about them and, what direction you see them going. The first is, at this point in the year, are you anticipating retirements? Is it too early or?
It's early. I'm sure we'll have a couple, but not retirements that wouldn't be returned.
Okay,
So it'll be small savings and, depending on where they exit and where,
right.
we usually five. But we don't know. If we're not hearing a lot of activity this year.
And have we earmarked what we think is a competitive hiring salary for the middle school principal?
Working within what our existing number is.
And do you have any early reads on the school choice recommendations? Just like big, broad, yes, no, no, like add 30, don't add any.
30, no. But we don't have space. I mean, I want to think about it. I have a lot of initial thoughts. I think it's going to be harder to make the 20 mark every year.
Right, of course.
And we're bumping up against the 100. And if we don't want to bring in at the elementary because we want to be mindful of the class size balance, that leaves just the middle of the high school. If we can't keep layering 5 and 5 and 5. So maybe 6th grade. And then we can always take a look at 9th grade. Because we've been putting 5 in the 6th grade every year. I would go back and study that. I would say probably the 10 to 15 max range.
So. Oh, how many?
Because I have to look at who's graduating to see what the real number is. But we posted, I mean, it's the application's up, it's open. We're cutting that deadline at the end of February, so we'll be ready to go beginning of March. I think moving it earlier is helpful. We're carrying 65 this year. 86. We have 86 and we have 2 graduating. Yep. That's across on the end of 20.
Sorry, the school choices across all grades, ADX total or?
Yes.
I just have a quick question. I think I've asked this question at the beginning of past 3 projects that we've done. Just because I keep hearing it from maybe quite a bit. Where are we in the process of looking at bringing back foreign language and data?
Originally, we had thought librarian would be added this year. I think we need to defer another year and we would be looking at 2027 fall for language of the elementary.
Is there any thought process yet about how to do that or how that would look as any of that work being
So
done yet?
if you dug into the ed plan real deep, we have to probably take next year we have to reorganize specials to achieve it. Because we only have 6 blocks per week to offer. So there's going to have to be a reorganization, consolidation, relook at what we do and how we do it. So we have,
Which is not a bad thing.
it's not a bad thing. It's a good time to do that. I think it needs a fresh look. We don't have the bandwidth to get that done for next year, and I don't think we have the necessarily the resources to do it. So 27 is the target date. It's in many documents.
Jake?
So, in part because of the chapter 70 public comment stuff, I've been trying to explore this question of how do we know if towns are taxing citizens at a I don't know what word to use here, reasonable, adequate, I don't know, what, excessive, I don't know what the word is, level. And I'm asking myself that because I'm sympathetic to the commentary we've been getting from Essex, that Essex is, at that point. And, a lot of the friction we've had over the past couple of years really boils down to that and their kind of request to have us explore kind of this affordability question. So to me, a key question that would inform my vote is, is this 8% increase with the corresponding projected values, costs to each town likely to trigger an override for the towns? Essex, in essence, has already told us yes, but that was before we had a projected percent. I'm assuming 8% will put them in that category, but I'd like to hear that. I know Manchester has said it's too early to say one way or another, and I appreciate that. But any insights into that will be helpful. And it's important to me because this is not, and I say this every year, I know, I'm sorry, this is not just a this year decision, right? This has implications for going forward. We've been using reserves now for how many years? 6? Something like that. It's, I appreciate Pam's positivity that if we can get another 3 or 4 years out of doing that strategy, we would have guessed that we could do this for 10 years, but maybe we can, right? But that's why I think it's important for us to model that out. But we need to work with the towns on modeling that out because this is as dependent on them as it is on our reserve abilities. And what I fear, because I'm seeing this in other communities around us, there are already communities now that are going for their 3rd or 4th consecutive override. And I fear we're getting to that point now ourselves. We're not, those tend to be a little smaller than us, but we're not big. So we're following the trend. And I just don't know if that's a strategy, right? Yes, we can make the case healthcare is abnormal, right? And people seem to understand that. But when you say that the 2nd or 3rd or 4th time, does it work? And we've got a bonding for the building coming up, right? So I just want to think through the implications of whatever we do this year for what position it puts us in next year and the year after, particularly given the schedule for the Essex building. The other thing that I'm a little concerned about is that we have traditionally viewed this first presentation as a high watermark. And we have essentially said, and Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, that, the budget won't go up after this. Yet we have an assumption in this budget of $750,000 of non-operational monies, either reserve or OPEB, that if we walk out of this meeting tonight saying this is our high watermark, we are essentially committing to that. And it does not give us an opportunity in the future to say, no, we don't want to use reserves this year. Because if we say this is a high watermark, we have to then commit these reserves in order to maintain this high watermark.
Or take them out of OPEB.
Or take them out of OPEB, right? But that's another strategy decision that we lock ourselves into, essentially, right? Walking out of this meeting. So I'm a little concerned about that because, well, yes, it is early and we are not deciding anything. We are, in essence, locking ourselves into a position.
I would argue we locked ourselves into a position 5 years ago.
I would say that too. Without the multi-year planning, this is where we are.
Well,
But
there is multi-year planning. There is multi-year. We were laying out the trajectory of this quite clearly, but there was a rejection of the multi-year plan.
okay, and we have, So, but all that to say, for this year, and given this particular budget that's on the table, I think we close an option to us. And I'm not saying that we should say no reserves, because that has huge implications for the towns and almost certainly would then, trigger overrides in both cases. But if that's a strategy that gets us 5 years out rather than just a couple of years out, it might be worth playing out with the towns But I don't want to lock us out of that opportunity.
So can I clarify? I feel as though you were saying that if we said, okay, this 7 point whatever percent is the high water mark, that we are then committing to use some resource,
That's
To keep it at-
750,000 level.
but it sounds to me as though you're not considering that the alternative would be to cut a bunch of stuff. Because there are other ways to keep it at that budget or below without using.
Yeah, I'm strictly speaking about options for reserves. That's all I'm talking about now. I'm not saying one way or another. Yes, that is cuts are an option going forward. They always are. But I'm saying in terms of any decision about reserve use, we are essentially making that decision tonight. If we're just looking at the reserves.
But I'm pushing back and saying there are other ways to get to that number that don't involve the reserves. So I don't know that that number on its own locks us into using reserves. We might also be saying, well, that's my preference out of all of these other options.
Right.
But I don't think we're to that discussion point yet. I'm just pointing out that I think that that number is not necessarily inextricably linked to reserves.
Good point. Point taken. Yep.
Insurance comes back at 0.
Yeah.
Well, this is just an initial presentation, right? We're not voting, we're not.
We're not, but we
No,
have traditionally told the towns the budget from this point will go up from this point. So if we decide as a committee to keep program as it is and reduce our use of reserves, we've cornered ourselves.
But we don't have an asterisk that says subject to health insurance, subject to special ed. I should have a big asterisk.
That, here's what it looks like without the reserves, it's like just over 10%.
I think we do, but no one ever reads the fine print.
No,
Okay.
I'll be very candid. This has been our high water mark, and I would argue that this is the high water mark. And if our interest now shifts to preserving reserves, then we need to look internally on how we can reduce our costs.
The other thing that comes to
Because I
mind,
don't think it's a year for a 10% budget override ask. I'll be very frank.
the thing that comes to mind when I hear you guys bring the high water mark, which we have traditionally honored, right? And that it does include this in this level, is also that we have a building vote on the table next year.
Yep.
This time. So I know you two are mindful of that. So if coming with this as the high water mark is what you feel comfortable with in that moment, I see what you're saying, but I'm inclined to roll with that because I know you're being mindful of the fact that there are going to be extra asks next year and that I don't know that there's political or goodwill capital to be gained from pulling that out just to give the shock value of the higher number, or even to give us the flexibility. I think it's more of a shock knowing that they would not come to us with a recommended budget that would be that high.
I'm not looking for shock value.
I know,
I'm looking
but it would create shock value. is what
I'm
I'm saying.
looking for implications on whether or not this puts us in a position for likely overrides for subsequent years. That's my concern.
Well, I think
And without a model to kind of play it out, I don't know how to answer that.
that's why I don't think we can, and that's why we need the questions.
That's why I want to put it on the table. That's why I want to put it on the table.
The attractive model is there.
I'm gonna update that.
You can plug and play and look at it's all there.
But if our budget is going to increase more than 2% every year, 2.5%, 3%, it's really up to the towns to see if they can afford it. Then the override is really their decision. I mean, yes, if we're giving them a 7 or 8% increase, yes, I mean, I know Essex is up against their levy, but yes, they need it override. If that's what it's going forward. But like we mentioned, we take these reserves out, we're looking at a 10.6% increase. I don't think that would be responsible at this point.
But also, Michelle, you may say that I don't foresee at this point a 3% budget increase for the school district anytime soon.
Exactly. So that's why I don't think we're ever going to be, I don't think the word override is ever gonna go off the table.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think part of it is because we didn't do an override. Like I remember Greg Federer going, and he said, instead of doing it incrementally, we chose to not. And then now, right, that's the result. Because that's why I think at some point you do need a bit of a frank discussion and say, look, the reality is this is what it looks like. And that's why I asked the question before, how long can we continue dipping into reserves? Because I agree with you, Pam. I don't think bringing a 10% increase is going to fly. I think maintaining level set services is reasonable, and there's going to be an expectation from just thinking, remembering last year's budgetary assumptions, right? So if we come and say, well, the only way to avoid that is massive cuts, I don't think the communities are going to support that either. And so it makes sense to me. The question is just how long do you keep doing that? Like at some point, I assume you can't continue to pay into reserves.
We will play with the model and see what that looks like.
And I get there are a lot of unknowns, so appreciate that.
I would say something to think about is if you have a really critical issue before voters over the next 12 months. You don't want to pull focus from that very complicated conversation. If you try to advance an override this year, knowing that you will only get enough to get by for a year and will need enough, like you're not going to get a multi-year override number this year. I don't think the conditions are there for it, but that's just my opinion. You're going to risk potentially failing your budget, failing your school, and then you have a real crisis because reserves are only back up, and we're going to have the building on top of it demand.
You're talking as if the 7 or 8% gets us out of having to do an override.
We're not landing on 7 or 8%. We're going to try to get that number down.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I think we might have to accept some things along the way to do that. But I don't know that pulling out the reserves, we will take out reserves if you want us to take out reserves. I think we're having the same conversation again, which is, I don't know that there's a willingness, if we're not willing to reduce anything that we do to continue to advance override five. Right? It can't be an all or nothing. It's going to have to be a balanced strategy of making some reductions to reduce the overall ask or using reserves to reduce the over. I mean,
Given the way the conversation is going, I know I raised reserves in the policy to begin with, so to close that loop, based on what I've heard since I raised that comment, I'm comfortable moving forward at this reserve level for your future planning purposes.
I mean, one thing to just reflect on is there was an override action last year to help Essex pay its portion. And we had to carry $750,000 of alternate revenues in that to get it to a number that would be acceptable to go forward. So I think we're stuck with this number until we can find an internal way to work that number down.
I do think it would be helpful, adding to my questions, but this isn't for my time, because it would be helpful to model, knowing that it's tentative at this point, but what it might look like to get that infusion from the building loan, should we be able to move forward, and how maybe to help our committee understand so that we can then help community members understand how that worked in the last round, because I remember this cycle being explained to me as I was just starting to pay attention to school committee. It was right at the very, very beginning of that $38,000 that tumbled into this craziness. That it was explained to me and how that cycle worked. And so maybe that's something that would be beneficial.
Yeah, and I want to phone a friend out there. I recall when I arrived, we were taking the interest income straight into the budget back in 2010. It was just coming in and staying and helping to manage the budget on our way to the first override, 15, 16. So it's an imperfect science.
Yeah. Well, it's not an overnight ask, but I mean, we've had two building projects in the short the history of our district, and we're about to embark on a third, it might be instructive for both purposes, for the budget and for the building vote, to see how financially that ends up benefiting all of us as partners.
All right, so we will vote on having our meeting on December 8th.
Yes, let's do that.
Are we waiting on my questions?
No, for now, we're just voting on having it. We can talk about the agenda if we have it.
So I will make a motion to. What's the
I
motion?
think the motion's on the table. We just need a vote on it. Yes or no. Do we have the December 8th meeting? No, this is the
That's what I did.
number crunching slash joint,
It's not on the calendar. I was looking at the.
because it's not scheduled.
So,
No, but it's also not a school committee.
It's a subcommittee.
so I guess I would just put out there that, because someone just asked, are we voting on the questions? I'm only in favor of adding this meeting if that is the vehicle that this body determines is the best way to get answers to my questions.
That's why we put it back on the table.
Okay, so I mean, it does mean that these questions would be included.
Yes.
We have any more discussion about this? Or are we good to go? So. All those in favor of us looking to schedule, whether it's on December 8th or looking another day, December 8th looks like it works for most. Yeah, most of the members need to be there. Are we in favor of that? All those in favor? All those not in favor? Thank you.
Is there an official question? Collaboration.
I'm calling it open
Collaboration.
collaboration. Oh, I'm sticking.
Open collaboration.
That's long.
And then the December 10th meeting is here.
Yes.
Right. And it says it.
No,
Is it the ninth?
I don't know.
And then
There's still a meeting on the 9th.
Oh, we
One in
still have a
the
meeting.
meeting, is in this.
The one in here.
Tenth is here. No, public here is here. It's here. First one's here, second one's in Essex. January. February. Yes.
When you say here.
Right.
Here again or right here?
Right here.
And the second one might be, what we expect for size. The second one might be,
It's always in Essex. That's good.
that's.
February 3rd. That will be.
Right.
Okay,
How are we deciding what questions are discussed? I'm not trying to draw.
Just
this
recording what was put on the table.
Direct from the minute.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I don't think it's limited. If someone else has questions, they could be sent in.
Yeah.
It could be detailed.
any final school committee call?
It's late. To be very, very clear, if I wasn't earlier, my tone in asking these questions is truly understanding so that it can inform how I interact with the information presented. I want to follow up from the last meeting, about Student Advisory Council. I don't know if they have a December meeting. I just know that that's something that's really been beneficial. It's been beneficial for me in the past to learn what goes on there and how that works. So if that's something that's still on table to have school committee reps do, I have it. And it might be also instructed that if there's anything that our committee would like to ask them to discuss, it might be useful. We don't really give much to them, and that's an ongoing thing.
What would the avenue for that be?
Actually, it might be.
Are we designating a rep? Are you rotating your reps?
Do we have a date for when they're meeting next? Or do we know what day of the week?
12/9 at 12/10. 12/9 to 12/10. I'd like to throw my name in the hat there.
Yeah, I am definitely interested in attending some, but,
And yeah, in the past, I had started with the chair, and if the chair couldn't make it, then we moved on. Last year, Chris wasn't able to make it, so we did like a rotating who was available and shared the opportunity.
It's a good way to continue. I will not be available.
I'll get something out in the next couple of days. Great.
Thank you, Arlo. Kristen,
Adjourn.
the motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you.